Novel Empire. Immortal God of Battle. Chapter 1 Divine Vein Awakening. Baimukan was a peak expert of the 9 firmaments continent. He possessed extraordinary talent in the 5 heavenly spiritual meridians, and was called the number 1 genius under the starry sky. Since he was young, he had joined one of the 8 great sects, the Profound Sky sect, and stepped into the martial arts world at the age of 8. After that, he rode Juechen and became an expert at the fortune realm at the age of 25. He had even arranged a marriage with Xian Qingzhu, the daughter of the heavenly profound sect master, which could be said to be doted on by thousands of people. He was the brightest new star in the 9 firmaments continent in the past 100 years, and he was regarded as the person with the best chance of reaching the peak of martial arts. However, when he was cultivating with Xian Qingzhu and trying to break through the bottleneck, he was plotted by his beloved woman. The heavenly profound sect master and Xian Qingzhu's father and daughter conspired to frame Baimukan, causing him to go crazy and seize his heavenly spirit's 5 meridians talent, which was absorbed by Xian Qingzhu. Baimukan, who had failed to break through the bottleneck, died with hatred because of the devilish fire. Since then, Xian Qingzhu, who was known as the number 1 beauty in the 9 firmaments continent, had stepped into the clouds, replacing Baimukan as one of the top characters on the 9 firmaments continent. Perhaps God's compassion had given Baimukan a chance to be a person for 2 generations. Little Nan, you're finally awake. Baimukan slowly opened his eyes. At the same time, accompanied by intense pain in his head, the memories of the 2 of them mixed together. Nan, who had just turned 16, was a little thin and frail. He looked quite handsome, inheriting the delicacy of his mother and the handsomeness of his father. At this moment, the middle-aged man who was shaking his shoulders vigorously was a middle-aged man who looked dignified but had a haggard face. Baimukan looked at the middle-aged man's face empty-handed. The memories in his mind gradually became clear. It turned out that he had been reborn on a dying youth, his current physical body. His name was Xiong Nan. The Xiong clan was once a rising clan in Songlan continent, Wulong continent, and Bluestone town. Because the current clan head, Xiong Zhanxiong, was powerful, this clan had once enjoyed unlimited glory. However, the path of martial Dao was unpredictable. When Xiong Zhanxiong broke through to the heaven origin realm, he had fallen into a bottleneck. Since then, he had been trapped for 20 years, and his cultivation had not improved by a single bit. He had become a laughingstock. There are 9 realms in martial arts: body tempering realm, innate realm, origin realm, heaven scryer realm, good fortune realm, divine martial saint, heavenly tribulation. Each realm had 9 levels, and Xiong Zhanxiong was trapped in the 9th level of the origin reversion realm, unable to break through. On the contrary, the Wang clan, the Li clan, the Mo clan, and the 3 great clans broke through to the heaven origin realm one after another, ruthlessly suppressing the Xiong clan. Perhaps it was because these 3 great clans had once humbled the Xiong clan, and now they were even more afraid that the Xiong clan would rise again, so they would intensify their crackdown on the Xiong clan. This was a world where everything was tested and talked about. They frantically carved up the Xiong clan's property and secretly killed all the geniuses of the Xiong clan, causing the Xiong clan members to die and flee, eventually leaving behind a desolate field of withered grass in the courtyard. Xiong Zhanxiong was Xiong Nan's grandfather, and the middle-aged man in front of him was Xiong Nan's father, Xiong Shaohua. At this moment, the Xiong clan was already in dire straits. They weren't as powerful as an ordinary wealthy clan. Apart from their parents and grandfather, there was only a loyal old housekeeper left in the entire clan. He was not abandoned by a few servants. Xiong Nan's memories went deep into Baimukan's heart, and he couldn't help but feel sad when he thought of the Xiong clan's desolate scene. "Father, this is..." Xiong Nan struggled to do it. "Oh, it's nothing. I accidentally bumped into it last night." Xiong Xiaohua casually wiped the blood off his forehead and said, "Little Nan, what's wrong with you? You can't even sleep after coming back last night." Looking at Xiong Xiaohua's concerned gaze, Xiong Nan also managed to squeeze out a smile and said, "Nothing much. Last night, there was a small mistake in training. There was no major problem. Father, please rest assured." Xiong Nan lied. In fact, it was the Wang clan's outsider Prince Zhong Lin who ambushed him and broke his internal organs with a kick. If it weren't for his sudden reincarnation in Xiong Nan, this Xiong Nan would probably have died in the early hours of this morning. However, Xiong Nan knew that his father was also lying. The injury on his father's forehead was obviously caused by a weapon. It was impossible for it to be a small injury caused by a knock. "Little Nan, your face is pale. Quickly lie down and don't move." Xiong Xiaohua hurriedly helped Xiong Nan lie down again, his eyes filled with concern. This kind of concern caused a trace of warmth to flow through Xiong Nan's heart. In his previous life, he was extremely aloof and arrogant. He had never experienced this kind of warmth before. His only relatives were his respected master and the woman he loved the most. He never thought that the one who betrayed him would be his father and daughter. "Not good, young lord, young master, not good." Suddenly, the door was knocked open. A servant of the Xiong clan rushed in a hurry and said anxiously, "Old Li has been caught by the Wang clan. He is currently outside the mansion. Young lord, hurry up and take a look." "What?" Xiong Nan and Xiong Xiaohua were shocked and hurriedly ran out of the room. Old Li was the old butler who had devoted his entire life to the Xiong clan, Li Zhong. Although Li Zhong and the Xiong family were slaves, in the hearts of the Xiong family, Li Zhong had always been treated as one's own family. Especially since Xiong Nan was raised by Li Zhong, that feeling was quite deep. Xiong Nan felt that although there was some pain in his body, his injuries had basically healed. "What's going on?" As Xiong Xiaohua ran, he berated the servant, "Didn't I tell you that no one can take half a step out of the Xiong clan in the past month?" Xiong Nan's mind buzzed and his memories surged. It turned out that 3 days later was the day of the selection of the outstanding juniors of Bluestone City. The outstanding young martial artists from the Wudao Town selection could participate in the Bluestone City's Wudao City selection in a month's time. At that time, there would be young geniuses from the Wulong Province's Wudao sect. It could be said that this was the most important day for all the clans in Bluestone Town, and even for all the young martial artists in Bluestone City. If a junior of a clan was chosen by a certain martial arts sect to become a disciple, then it would be a great thing for the clan to shine brightly, and their clan status would soar. The Wang clan, one of the 3 great clans of Bluestone Town, was the one that attacked the Xiong Manor the most ruthlessly. They drew a large circle around the Xiong Manor and warned that within a month, those from the Xiong Manor who stepped out of the circle would be killed without mercy. The purpose was to prevent the Xiong family from participating in the Martial Town election and the Martial City election. Thinking of this, Xiong Nan clenched his fists tightly, his eyes almost spitting out fire. He thought to himself, "Wang clan, you dare touch a hair on my grandfather Li Zhong." The father and son rushed out of the mansion and saw a group of Wang clan youths looking at them in a cruel manner. 3 steps away from the entrance of the Xiong Manor was a long red line. That red line represented the Xiong Manor's life and death line. Outside the red line, Wang Jiayuan's Prince Zhong Lin was leading a group of subordinates, and under his feet, Li Zhong, who was bleeding from the corner of his mouth, was stepping on a dead dog. Wang Zonglin caught a glimpse of Xiang Nan with a slightly different expression. He muttered to himself in a very small voice, "This brat is actually still alive. Could it be that he attacked too lightly last night?" Wang Zonglin. Xiang Shaohua poured blood into his pupils and angrily said, "Let go of Li Zhong." As Wang Zonglin stepped on Li Zhong, he pointed at the red line between the two sides and said, "We said that the Xiang clan that crossed this red line will be killed without mercy. Could it be that you've taken my Wang clan's words for granted?" Someone beside him immediately laughed loudly. "Do you really think you are still the Xiang manor? Old dog Xiang Zhanxiong hasn't left the Xiang manor for 3 years, so he might have died long ago." Old dog Xiang Shaohua's body trembled with anger. Unfortunately, he was not born to be a martial artist. He had cultivated bitterly for 40 years, but he was only a small body tempering stage 5th layer martial artist. Xiang Nan's talent was much better than his father's, but he wasn't that outstanding. He was only 16 years old and had only reached the 7th level of body tempering. However, Wang Zonglin, a 16-year-old distant relative of the Wang clan, was already an expert at the 9th level of body tempering. "Wang Zonglin, get rid of your dirty feet." Xiang Nan took a step forward. His toes were just about to touch the red line. He said in a deep voice, "Aren't you worried that my Xiang family will participate in the martial arts town election? I can promise you, as long as you let Grandpa Li go, I will withdraw." "Young master, no." Half of Li Zhong's face was trampled on the ground. At this moment, he did not know where the strength came from. He suddenly raised his head and said with difficulty, "This old man's remnant life is not worth anything. Young master, you." Before he could finish speaking, Li Zhong was stomped back by Wang Zonglin, and he even used the sole of his shoe to ruthlessly crush Li Zhong's face twice. Seeing this scene, Xiang Nan immediately clenched his hands tightly and gritted his teeth, saying word by word, "Let go of Grandpa Li. I will be chosen not to go by Wudao town." Wang Zonglin looked up and smiled, "It's just an old dog raised by a family. It's worth your sacrifice. You're truly a loser. It seems that even without the suppression of my Wang family, your Xiang family wouldn't have done much. Since you want this old dog, I will return it to you." With that, Wang Zonglin picked up Li Zhong and kicked him on the back. Li Zhong immediately flew out, and Xiang Nan Xiang Shaohua and his son charged forward, stopping Li Zhong from flying backwards. "Grandpa Li." Xiang Nan looked at Li Zhong's injuries and saw that his internal organs were shattered by Wang Zonglin's kick just like he did last night. Old Li Xiang Shaohua's eyes also became moist. He supported Li Zhong and choked, "Why bother?" Although Li Zhong's mouth had been bleeding, he forced a smile, "Young lord, young madam is not well. As a servant, you can see it in your eyes and feel pain in your heart. This is me, cough cough." As he spoke, Li Zhong trembled as he took out something from his bosom. The Xiang clan's father and son were already in tears when they saw his colleague. It was a bag of herbs. Xiang Nan's mind buzzed. He finally understood why Grandpa Li was lying on the ground when he was trampled by Wang Zonglin, and his back was slightly arched. It turned out that Li Zhong had risked his life to protect this bag of herbs. Li Zhong had been beaten by Wang Zonglin to the point that his bones were broken, a long shirt was tattered, and even his organs were shattered. However, this bag of herbs was unexpectedly intact. Old Li Xiang Shaohua pinched the herbs and choked, "My Xiang clan. I'm sorry about you, Grandfather." Xiang Nan grabbed Li Zhong's hand and said, "Grandpa, little Nan still wants to play with Grandpa and go to the back mountain to pick mushrooms with Grandpa. Grandpa, don't go. Li Zhong kindly stroked Xiang Nan's temples, and the doting look in his eyes was as warm as the sun. Good child. Grandpa Li, cough. I can't accompany you anymore. Grandpa Li is leaving. You have to take good care of yourself. Old man, I have served the Xiang clan all my life. Now that I am able to die for the Xiang clan, it can also be considered. Before he could finish speaking, Li Zhong spat out a mouthful of blood on Xiang Nan's chest and died. At this moment, Xiang Nan felt as if he had been struck by 5 bolts of lightning. At the same time, a thunderclap exploded from his dantian. The divine veins in his body that had been hidden for a long time had awakened. Chapter 2: Make a forceful move. A martial artist's innate talent was divided into several grades, which were mortal grade, spirit grade, earth grade, and heavenly grade. Each level of talent had 5 types of affinity for the 5 elements, known as the 5 meridians: wind, wood, water, fire, and earth. Wind represented the potential of speed, wood represented the potential of life, water represented the potential of enduring battle, fire represented the potential of battle, and earth represented the potential of the physical body. Most martial artists did not possess the affinity of the 5 meridians, but they only needed to possess one affinity to be considered a genius. Take the mortal grade talent as an example. Under the heavens, there were countless martial artists who possessed the lowest level of mortal veins. It was like crossing a river. However, if there was a person who possessed the mortal grade fire vein, and he only needed to cultivate diligently, then he would suddenly rise up. This meant that his explosive power and combat strength would far surpass that of an ordinary martial artist. If one possessed 2 types of pulse affinity in a talent level, then this kind of person could be called a genius. In his previous life, Bai Mukin had 5 types of meridians, including 5 affinities. Moreover, it was the highest level of the 5 heavenly meridians. This was also why Bai Mukin was called the number 1 genius in the starry sky. However, what others did not know was that Bai Mukin actually had 6 meridians. Apart from the wind, wood, water, fire, and earth, there was another vein that was always hidden. Bai Mukin had always known about his hidden bloodline, but he had never been able to develop it. The reason for that was because he had never been able to find it in his entire life. Later, Bai Mukin was killed, and the 5 heavenly spiritual meridians were also seized by Xian Qingzhu. Perhaps, this could be considered a blessing in disguise. After his rebirth, Bai Mukin, the current Xiang Nan, had actually awakened the last bloodline that Xian Qingzhu had failed to seize. Rumbling thunder exploded in Xiang Nan's dantian. The sound was like a bolt from the blue, but only Xiang Nan could feel it. Xiang Nan was stunned, and then his heart was incomparably shocked. Divine grade. Lightning meridian. Divine grade talent was definitely at the legendary level. Throughout the entire history of martial arts, there were only a few records of divine grade talent. No one had ever been able to say clearly what kind of existence divine grade talent was. Even for Xiang Nan, this divine vein was still filled with uncertainties. Originally, Xiang Nan, who had been robbed of his strongest talent, was already disheartened. The clinker had been bestowed upon him by the heavens, awakening his last pulse. It turned out that it was a divine pulse that was 1 level higher than the 5 heavenly spiritual meridians. The cycle of the heavenly Tao, retribution, was not good. However, at this moment, Xiang Nan was extremely grieved and didn't have much time to slowly think about his talent. Wang Zonglin. Xiang Nan suddenly turned around and angrily pointed at Wang Zonglin and shouted, "I have promised to give up the martial arts town election, but you still refuse to let go of an old man who is in his late teens." Wang Zonglin crossed his shoulders and mocked, "I can kill as many old dogs as I want, Li Zhong. I'm not afraid to tell you the truth, my Wang clan will definitely eat you. One day with my Wang clan here, your surname Xiang will behave like a dog and lie down obediently. There's something else." Wang Zonglin pointed at the red line beneath his feet and said, "Your useless father secretly went to get medicine for your sickly mother today, but he was surrounded by us. He was lucky enough to escape back to the Xiang manor. Could it be that your Xiang clan remembers whether to eat or not? Have you forgotten the pain after recovering from the scar?" It turned out that Xiang Xiaohua had actually done the same thing as Li Zhong. The scar on his forehead was left behind by the Wang family. "Good, good, good." Xiang Nan greeted him 3 times in a row. He laughed furiously, "Since you didn't even care about these words and put them out in front of everyone, then let's settle the old debt together with the new debt." With that, Xiang Nan turned around and returned to the Xiang manor. Outside the mansion, Wang Zonglin laughed loudly, "You little 7th level body tempering martial artist, you want to fight to the death with me at the dignified 1st level of the Xiantian realm? You're simply courting death." As he spoke, Xiang Nan strode out of the Xiang manor with a Xiang family steel gun in his hand. "Little Nan, don't be impulsive. You're not his match." Xiang Xiaohua's expression changed drastically. His Xiang clan had already fallen to this point, and he could no longer lose his only son. The martial Dao realm could be said to be the 1st level of the heavens, and the body tempering realm was the body refining realm. The 1st level of the body refining realm represented the lethality of a punch of 100 kilograms. Wang Zonglin was at the 9th level of body tempering, and his punch had a strength of 900 jin. As for Xiang Nan, he was only at the 7th level of body tempering, which was only 700 jin. The gap between him and Wang Zonglin was still very big. However, Xiang Nan's killing intent had already been decided. He carried the spear backwards and walked out step by step. Xiang Xiaohua originally wanted to stop Xiang Nan, but at that moment, he saw a trace of strangeness on Xiang Nan's face, an expression of arrogance. This unfamiliar arrogance made Xiang Xiaohua hesitate, as if he couldn't recognize his son. This kind of arrogance is the imposing manner of not lowering my head to look at ants, not raising my head to look at the heavens, my feet stepping on the earth, everything beneath my feet. Xiang Nan held his head high, his waist straight, and crossed the red line with his spear in his hand. Wang Zonglin was stunned for a moment. He didn't expect Xiang Nan to actually dare to come out. At this moment, Xiang Nan's 2nd foot also stepped out. He tilted his head slightly and said in a low voice, "I've crossed the red line. I'm going to buy a good coffin for my grandpa Li now. You, stop me." Wang Zonglin was stunned and angrily said, "What a trash kid. How dare you shout at me? I'll take this opportunity to kill you." After saying that, Wang Zonglin pulled out a low-grade spirit-grade saber from his back. The power in his body surged and he slashed down fiercely towards Xiang Nan. Weapons, martial arts, and the same cultivation realm were divided into mortal grade, spirit grade, earth grade, heaven grade, profound grade, Dao grade, and divine grade. Wang Zonlin's saber was using the Wang clan's intermediate spiritual grade saber technique, the Yuan shattering saber technique. This saber strike had forced Wang Zonlin's basic strength to 1,300 jin. However, what Xiang Nan had learned earlier was only an ordinary mid-grade cultivation technique, the Xiang clan spear. It could force a maximum of 700 jin of strength to 800 jin. Thus, the Wang clan's ridiculing laughter that frightened the crowd immediately rang out in the surroundings. However, Xiang Nan could no longer hear the ear-piercing sounds of mockery. In his mind, he quickly recalled a cultivation technique he had seen before. Back then, Bai Mukin had seen a rare lightning-attributed cultivation technique called the rushing lightning spear. Actually, this cultivation technique wasn't too powerful. It was only a low-grade spirit-grade cultivation technique, but because of its lightning attribute, its power far surpassed that of a cultivation technique of the same level. Alright. Xiang Nan took a deep breath and thought to himself, I want to see just how strong this divine-grade lightning meridian talent is. It was also at this moment that Wang Zonglin leapt up high and slashed down with his saber. He shouted, Heaven-breaking slash. The yuan-shattering saber technique, Heaven-breaking slash, carried a terrifying strength of 1,300 jin as it slashed towards Xiang Nan. Even if he thought about it with his toes, he knew who was stronger. However, what shocked everyone was that Xiang Nan didn't dodge and actually shot at Wang Zonglin's saber. He had slashed down from top to bottom, but Xiang Nan had raised his spear from bottom to top. Not to mention the rest, Xiang Nan was at a great disadvantage just because of his position. Ha, this brat is courting death. Everyone burst into laughter. Xiang Xiaohua's heart was burning with anxiety. He had already stepped forward and prepared to charge forward. No matter what, he had to save his son. At this critical moment, the knives and spears collided. Jing Long, go out to sea. Xiang Nan muttered to himself. This was one of the techniques of the rushing thunder spear, and it was also one of the simplest starting moves. It was called Dragon Awakening. At this moment, the lightning veins in Xiang Nan's dantian suddenly became irritable. They surged with lightning, and the power of the lightning veins instantly filled Xiang Nan's entire body. At the same time, the power in Xiang Nan's body instantly exploded. 700 jin. 800 jin. 900, it's still rising. 1111. 1002. 1003, 1004. 15,000. The terrifying lightning attribute increased the strength of Xiang Nan's spear to 1500 jin like an explosion. The blades and spears collided, producing a loud sound that caused one's eardrums to ache. The lightning meridian attribute was indeed worthy of its resounding reputation. Hiss! Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air on the first floor and took half a step back in shock. Wang Zonglin was actually knocked over by Xiang Nan's spear. Even the man and the gun were sent flying. The saber in his hand rose high into the sky and spun buzzing. Wang Zonglin's body quickly fell down. The tremendous vibrating force caused Wang Zonglin to spit out a mouthful of red blood. The moment Wang Zonglin shot backwards, Xiang Nan suddenly took a step forward and held his gun. Attack! The spear was like a lightning dragon, piercing through Wang Zonglin's heart. Rolling hot blood flowed down the shaft of the gun and onto Xiang Nan's right hand, turning into a line of blood. Xiang Nan raised his spear and thrust Wang Zonglin into the air. A gust of wind blew through the corner of Wang Zonglin's robe, which was still flipping. Body tempering 7th layer, one shot to kill a body tempering 9th layer expert. Xiang Nan looked ahead and didn't even look at Wang Zonglin. He said in a deep voice, I'll take your dog life as a tribute to Grandpa Li. It was only at this moment that the Wang family's subordinates woke up from their dreams and rushed forward one by one with roars. It wasn't that they weren't afraid of death, but that Wang Zonglin was dead. If they didn't give the Wang clan an explanation, they would die on their way back. 7 or 8 body-tempering 7th-stage martial artists rushed forward at the same time. Xiang Nan took a deep breath and muttered in his heart, "Dragon spear." The spear was like a dragon, a fast spear. Light. Swift. Accurate. Hate. Xiang Nan stood almost where he was. With a slight step, he fired his spear everywhere. The spear tip attacked so quickly that it formed a fan-shaped spear shadow in midair. The fan-shaped spear figure disappeared in a flash. Xiang Nan stopped his hand and carried the spear behind him as he strode forward. The 7 or 8 martial artists were still in midair. At this moment, they were all pouncing on the spot where Xiang Nan was just now, but none of them could raise their heads again. Each of these people had a bloody hole pierced through their hearts, and their blood hadn't yet dyed their clothes red. The lightning meridian talent not only possessed an extremely powerful explosive power, but also possessed a world-shocking speed. "Father." Xiang Nan took 3 steps forward and said without turning his head, "It's time to pay off the debts owed to us by the 3 great clans. Please stay in the Xiang Manor and prepare for Grandpa Li's funeral. I'll go pick a coffin and come later." The sky was cloudy and drizzling, and the streets of Bluestone Town were sparsely populated. Xiang Nan walked in the rain with his spear on his back. His emotions were complicated and difficult to understand, and his eyes gradually became firm. Life is precious. Since the heavens have given me another chance to revive, and given me a heaven-defying divine talent, I must make good use of it this time. Bluestone Town was not small. It belonged to Bluestone City and was one of the most prosperous towns under Bluestone City's rule. Because of the existence of the 3 great clans, the town's reputation was very resounding. At the end of the Grand Dao in front of him was a coffin shop. After Xiang Nan expressed his intention to come, he was told that the coffin had to be ordered beforehand. This scene made Xiang Nan immediately realize how insignificant his understanding of the real world was. In the past, he could be said to have used money like earth. He never had to care about any worldly matters. As long as he wanted something, the profound sky sect would help him obtain it. He didn't even know that coffins needed to be reserved. Chapter 3 Rain Knight Berserk. I can pay more, but I have to get the coffin today. Xiang Nan thought for a moment and took out a cloth bag. When he opened it, a bag full of silver coins scattered on the counter. There could be more than 300 silver coins. The shopkeeper of the coffin shop was overjoyed when he saw the silver coins. He hurriedly said, "The Zhang family in the east of the city has ordered a coffin for old Master Zhang in advance. It has just been completed. If you are in a hurry, this coffin can be given to you first." It was a fine golden Nanmu coffin, with even braced carvings on it. "Sure." Xiang Nan sized up the coffin. Although it was still far from what he had expected, this was still a small town. It was already quite good to have a golden Nanmu coffin. "All right." The shopkeeper put away the silver coins and rubbed his hands with a smile. "Go ahead. I'll have a few assistants carry them to your mansion later." "No need, I'll take it myself." Xiang Nan expressionlessly carried the huge and heavy coffin on his shoulder and walked out of the shop with one hand clasped in his arms. The shopkeeper of the coffin shop looked at Xiang Nan's back with envy on his face. A martial artist in the dark was good. A coffin as big as this would normally take a lot of effort to carry. However, Xiang Nan looked as if he could carry it effortlessly at such a young age. The rain outside was getting heavier and heavier, and the dark clouds in the sky were occasionally mixed with the sound of rolling thunder. "That's all my savings," Xiang Nan thought while carrying the coffin. The Xiang clan had long since fallen into a terrible state of despair. They were almost unable to pay for their daily expenses, and Xiang Nan was even more short of money. Now, he even spent the only 300 silver coins he had. However, cultivating martial arts is an act of burning money. Without money, even if you have the talent of number one in the world, it would be difficult for a clever woman to cook without rice. Xiang Nan rubbed his chin and suddenly remembered something from the past. Oh right, this is the Wulong continent, I vaguely remember. In his previous life, he had a treasure map. The treasure should be nearby. Back then, he hadn't been here because of the distance. Now, he could go take a look. Thinking about it carefully, those things should be buried in the Wulong continent and the Black Sharp Mountain range. They shouldn't be far from here. Xiang Nan was pondering, but his footsteps gradually slowed down. He looked up and saw a dozen black-clothed men standing quietly in the middle of the street opposite him. You came quite quickly. Xiang Nan carried the coffin and narrowed his eyes. But isn't it too much of a joke to deal with me with such a small number of people? He said. It hadn't rained when he killed Wang Zonglin. There were some bystanders around. Someone must have tipped off the Wang clan. As he said this, Xiang Nan secretly observed that according to the fluctuations of the weather in the bodies of the dozen or so black-clothed men, there were actually 2 Xiantian first-stage experts. As for the others, they were all at the 8th to 9th level of body tempering. Most of these people were 26 or 27 years old, and they should be the generals raised by the Wang clan. This time, Xiang Nan's expression became serious. The strength of a Xiantian realm expert did not start from 1000 jin, because the Xiantian realm expert's body had already condensed Xiantian weather. Therefore, the actual basic strength of a Xiantian 1 Dan expert was 2100 jin. Among the crowd, the 2 Xiantian experts took a step forward. One of them should be the boss. He smiled sinisterly and said, "You are quite courageous. Even our Wang clan's outsiders dare to kill you. However, your luck is pretty good. If not for the fact that the Wang clan's elders had all gone to the city lord's mansion to attend the wedding banquet, you would definitely have died even more miserably." A wedding banquet? Xiang Nan frowned slightly. It seemed that the Wang clan did not know that Wang Zonglin had been killed by him. Only the clans that stayed behind would deal with him ahead of time. However, City Lord Bluestone City? He only has 2 sons. Didn't he start a family long ago? There was no such thing as a wedding banquet. The leading Xiantian expert laughed loudly. For the sake of your imminent death, there's no harm in telling you. Today is the engagement of Xian Qingzhu, daughter of the 9 Firmaments Continent's heavenly profound sect master, and Feiyin Luhai, son of the soaring cloud sect master. The marriage of 2 of the 8 great sects is an earth-shattering event. Together, the 2 great sects have scattered countless amounts of money, causing the entire world to celebrate. Even our Blue Tide continent has been affected. As he said this, the leader was extremely arrogant, as if it was already a great deal of face for him to be able to attend such a wedding banquet. What a large sum of money! Xiang Nan felt a faint pain in his heart. The woman he once loved deeply, and the woman who betrayed him, had finally come together with Feiyin Luhai. Xiang Nan took a deep breath and closed his eyes. Alright, I've talked enough nonsense to you. We have to take your head in advance and go back to report. The Xiantian clan general waved his hand and 11 experts immediately rushed forward. Xiang Nan remained motionless, his eyes still closed, but in his heart, he was doing a meticulous plan that no one else could have imagined. With my current strength, confronting those 2 Xiantian first-stage experts head-on will definitely not bring me any benefits. Especially since there are so many of them, consuming them will be detrimental to me. Since it was impossible to clash head-on, he could only use his brilliant battle techniques to win, striving for a quick conclusion. At this moment, 11 experts had already arrived in front of Xiang Nan. The three at the front drew out their long sabers and launched an attack. At the same time, Xiang Nan suddenly opened his eyes, and a light flashed in his eyes. With a loud boom, he placed the coffin on the ground. At the same time, he rushed forward with a gun in one hand. A short charge, slightly tilted, dodging the two knives, the spear pierced through the chest of the first person, his left arm bent to block the neck of the second person. Then, Xiang Nan took a step forward and pulled out the spear from the back of the first person's body. He threw the second person with his left arm and collided with the third person. The spear swung and pierced through the chest of the second and third person. In one move, he killed 3 people in a row. That movement was smooth and flowing without the slightest delay. This, not far away, the expressions of the 2 Xiantian generals who were hugging their shoulders and laughing coldly changed drastically. The leading general was shocked. Something is wrong with this brat. He is clearly only at the 7th level of body tempering, but why does he have such astonishing speed and strength? The junior general next to the leader shouted, "How did he do it? How did he manage to walk so smoothly in such a dense attack?" At this moment, Xiang Nan had already entered a state of absolute concentration. In the shower, he killed 3 people at a time. There are still 8. Xiang Nan pulled back his spear and dodged the long blade slashed at him by the 4th man. His left hand clenched the enemy's wrist and slightly trembled. The enemy's wrist was immediately dislocated and the steel saber fell. Xiang Nan soared into the air and kicked the hilt of the saber with his left foot. The steel saber flew out with a whoosh, piercing through the 5th person's eyebrows. At the same time, the spear in his hand swept across. The rushing thunder spear swept through 1,000 troops. The spear swept out, sending 3 people flying in succession. A long spear was fiercely thrown out, and both of its feet shot onto the ground. Its entire body rushed out like an arrow that had left a string. The spear pierced through the space between the 4th person's eyebrows. Xiang Nan happened to arrive and casually pulled out the spear from the back of the 4th person's head. His legs clasped around the 6th person's neck. A beautiful pair of scissors kicked the 6th man up and grabbed the gun with his right hand. He pierced through the neck of the 7th person and kicked the spear back with his left foot, causing the spear that pierced through the neck of the 6th person to stand up and kick the shaft of the spear heavily. The spear pierced through the 6th man and flew out, piercing through the 7th man's chest. "Hurry! Hurry up and attack! Something's wrong with this brat!" The leader shouted in horror and rushed forward with another Xiantian expert. It wasn't that these 2 experts were too slow, but that Xiang Nan was too fast. The remaining 4 8th level body tempering generals were already stunned by Xiang Nan's action, and their movements instantly slowed down. Xiang Nan's eyes were fixed on the 2 Xiantian generals, while the weapons in his hands were attacking the 4 body tempering generals. These 4 people had no ability to resist in Xiang Nan's hands and were instantly killed. "You're courting death." The leader sliced down the long saber in his hand, and a small arc of saber chi rushed towards him. A sign unique to the Xiantian realm, the weather first. Xiang Nan forcefully twisted his body. The saber chi almost shot out from his shoulder. Even half of his sleeve was cut off, but Xiang Nan ignored it at all. He was not in a hurry to make a move. Almost at the same time, the attack of the 2nd Xiantian clan general arrived. The Xiantian clan general wiped out the long saber in his hand horizontally. The arc-shaped crescent saber chi was intended to slash Xiang Nan's waist. Although the cultivation methods of these two people weren't as high as Wang Zhonglin's, their cultivation realms were still high. With 2,100 gene of basic strength amplified by the cultivation methods, they would be around 2,300 gene. Xiang Nan's small 7th level body tempering realm immediately felt exhausted. Let me see how you can escape. The leader's eyes were already shining with triumph. As a result, a faint arc suddenly appeared at the corner of Xiang Nan's mouth. His entire body suddenly jumped up, his body swinging horizontally in mid-air, and he rotated at high speed. Raptors swing their tails. Xiang Nan shouted in his heart. With the help of his body's lateral rotation speed, he swung the spear longitudinally. The lightning meridian innate ability in his body was activated, and his 700 gene strength increased to 15,000 kilograms. With a loud swing of his spear, Peng landed on the leader's neck, smashing the leader's entire body to the ground. The spear continued to advance, and in the second half, it landed on the stomach of another general, sending the general flying. Seeing the opportunity, Xiang Nan's feet suddenly jumped again the moment he landed. A spear pierced through the heart of the general in the air and pulled it out from his back. Then, he threw the spear towards the ground. That gun had just pierced through the back of the general's neck. Xiang Nan relied on his astonishing combat skills to make up for the gap in cultivation realms. Rain poured down, and the rolling blood flowed everywhere. Xiang Nan landed lightly on the ground. The spear rotated half a circle in his hand, and with a whoosh, he turned back behind him. Then, he carried the coffin with one hand and walked towards the depths of the rain curtain. Xian Qingzhu, today is your wedding day. The scenery is truly boundless. Even the distant blue tide continent is helping you celebrate. And do you remember that there was once a Baimukan in this world? When you were smiling and welcoming thousands of people, I was alone in the rain killing people. One attracted the attention of tens of thousands of people, while the other traveled alone in the night rain. Qingzhu, Master, Mu Chen will come back for you. Chapter 4 Treasure Hunting in the Cave. At the entrance of the Xiang Manor, Xiang Shaohua saw Xiang Nan carrying the coffin with one hand, and his heart ached badly. Little Nan, you're back. Xiang Shaohua took a few steps forward and took the coffin from Xiang Nan. Xiang Nan shook the jade bead at the end of his hair and said, "How is mother?" Xiang Shaohua's face darkened slightly as he said, "I've been sick for many years. When it rains on a cloudy day, I can't get up." Xiang Nan nodded, "I want to see my mother. Put away this coffin and we'll bury Grandpa Li tomorrow." After passing through the empty courtyards, Xiang Nan's footsteps slowed down slightly. This place was once bustling with flowers, but now, it was so desolate that no one paid attention to it. No matter what, my fleshly body belongs to the Xiang clan. I will be as loyal and filial to the Xiang clan as Xiang Nan is. Xiang Nan clenched his fists and pushed the door open. The room was very big, but it was also very empty. Over the years, the Xiang clan had deteriorated. The valuable furniture had basically been sold, and the air was filled with a faint smell of inferior herbs. Xiang Nan stood quietly beside the bed, carefully examining the middle-aged woman. A soft light gradually appeared in his eyes. Xiang Nan suddenly felt a little relieved. Perhaps his death wasn't a bad thing. After he died once, he had a mother that he had never had in his previous life. He slowly retreated outside the door and said, "Mother, I hope you will recover soon." "Father, I want to see grandfather." Xiang Nan found Xiang Shaohua and said solemnly. Xiang Xiaohua hesitated for a moment and muttered, "But your grandfather hasn't come out of seclusion for 3 years, so you're interrupting him without permission." Xiang Nan shook his head slightly. "Your son knows." Xiang Xiaohua hesitated for a moment before leading his son to the deepest courtyard. Xiang Xiaohua had many questions about why his son had suddenly become so strong, and why his temper was calmer than before. Xiang Zhanxiong's seclusion was in an extremely deep underground secret room in the Xiang Manor. The father and son arrived one after another and knocked on the stone door. After a full cup of tea, a deep voice came from inside the door, "Come in." Xiang Xiaohua patted Xiang Nan on the shoulder and turned to leave. Xiang Nan entered the stone room, closed the stone door and said, "Grandpa Li Zhong has gone." Hearing this, a long sigh came from the shadow of the stone room. The sigh contained helplessness and guilt. Through the light, Xiang Nan observed his own grandfather, Xiang Zhanxiong. His nose and mouth were wide, his eyebrows were sharp, and his eyebrows revealed a heroic aura. However, the white hair on his temples was enough to show that this old man had been living a very depressed life in recent years. The Xiang clan's only backing now was Xiang Zhanxiong. He had been trapped in the 9th level of the Origin Core realm for so many years, so perhaps there was a way to help him break through. Xiang Nan looked at Xiang Zhanxiong's face at this moment, and his heart was more or less full of emotions. Xiang Zhanxiong also looked at Xiang Nan and said, "Have you reached the 7th level of body tempering? It seems that we, little Nan, are very diligent." Xiang Nan bowed slightly and said, "Little Nan doesn't dare to neglect." "Grandpa, have you been cultivating smoothly recently?" These words made Xiang Zhanxiong even more worried. It seemed that there was still no progress in breaking through the bottleneck. The grandfather and grandson chatted for a long time before they parted ways. Xiang Nan thought to himself. Grandpa's eyebrows were glittering with red light, and his words were filled with anger. Obviously, it wasn't a mistake in his cultivation, but he had really encountered a bottleneck. Xiang Nan did have a way to help his grandfather through this difficult time. The key was that he didn't have any money, so he couldn't buy the spirit herbs and spirit pills he needed. At this time, the Xiang clan's financial resources had long since dried up. After returning to his room, Xiang Nan sat down cross-legged and began to absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth to refine his pill field and raise his martial arts realm. With his heaven-defying divine talent and the conjoined body technique of the Thunder Spear, he had entered the breakthrough stage in less than an incense stick of time, reaching the 8th level of the body tempering realm. However, at the moment of his breakthrough, Xiang Nan felt a great sense of emptiness appear in his body. His skin was rapidly aging at a visible rate, and even wrinkles had appeared. Xiang Nan hurriedly stopped, his expression extremely solemn. Gradually, the wrinkles on his skin dissipated again. "No," Xiang Nan shook his head and thought to himself, "upgrading my cultivation realm will rapidly drain the spiritual energy from my body. If I increase my cultivation recklessly, I will become a dried corpse." Without spirit herbs or pills, raising one's cultivation level would be equivalent to courting death. However, ordinary first-grade spirit herbs were also worth 300 gold coins. Both pills and spirit herbs were divided into 9th grade. Spirit herbs were important ingredients for refining pills. A single pill was tens or even hundreds of times more valuable than a spirit herb of the same grade. Xiang Nan smiled bitterly. He didn't even have a first-grade spirit herb. A medicinal pill. It was a kind of daydreaming luxury. It's time to take a look at the treasure trove. Xiang Nan did not hesitate at all. He took advantage of the heavy rain and rushed to the Black Sharp mountain range overnight. The Black Sharp mountain range was located at the border of Bluestone Town, so the journey wasn't too far. Xiang Nan shuttled through the mountains and forests, constantly recalling the location of the treasure trove in his mind. I found it. So it really exists. Xiang Nan pushed open the dense bushes and found a stone door in front of a section of the mountain wall. At this moment, a red light suddenly appeared in the distant sky. Xiang Nan turned around and saw that it must be Blue Stone City releasing fireworks to celebrate Xian Qingzhu's engagement. Xiang Nan recalled the last words that Xian Qingzhu had said before he died. Mu Chen, I really liked you. But I won't regret killing you today. Between love and the future, I choose the future. This was the last thing Xian Qingzhu said to Bai Mukan before the steel needle in her hand landed between his eyebrows. Heh, future. Xiang Nan laughed miserably. Xian Qingzhu, is this what you want? Let's meet again in the future. At that time, I hope you won't regret it either. With that, Xiang Nan strode into the cave and disappeared into the darkness. In the depths of the cave, lights shone. In an instant, the multicolored colors shone on Xiang Nan, making him unable to open his eyes. My God! Xiang Nan was stunned. Inside the cave, it was beaten into a small palace pattern. In the middle, there was a pile of gold coins as tall as 2 people. It was simply a small mountain of gold coins. It was roughly estimated that there were at least 5 to 6 million gold coins. Such a large number, even in the most glorious period of the Xiang clan, it had never been possessed before. Xiang Nan was overjoyed, so much gold is enough to buy the spiritual herbs I need. Beside the walls of the small palace were rows of wooden frames. The south wall wooden shelves were filled with all sorts of calligraphy, paintings, and antiques. The value of these items was astonishing. Another good income. However, he had no choice but to not sell these things. Now that he was too weak, it was easy for him to stir up trouble. On the north wall, there was also a whole row of wooden shelves, all of which were filled with spirit herbs and even medicinal pills. A light flashed in Xiang Nan's eyes. Chapter 5 Trap Oneself in a Trap. Xiang Nan counted the wealth he had obtained and couldn't help but start to breathe quickly. Spirit herbs were fine. The key was that medicinal pills were definitely priceless. You may not even be able to buy it even if you have money. You value luck very much. There were plenty of spirit herb pills here, enough to break through the bottleneck for Grandpa. Xiang Nan was very impolite and directly swallowed a Tier 1 fire bath pill. There were also high-grade 3rd-grade fire bathing pills, but he still didn't dare to eat them. Because his cultivation level was too low, if he ate a pill of too high a grade, his body would explode and die. As the name implied, the flame bath pill was a kind of thing that could violently purify the meridians of martial artists, and it could also strengthen their dantian. Very quickly, the fierce medicinal properties of the fire bath pill burned inside Xiang Nan's body. He could clearly feel his meridians being baptized by the medicinal properties of fire. He immediately sat cross-legged, absorbing the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, once again breaking through to the 8th level of body tempering. Xiang Nan instantly broke through to the 8th level of body tempering. There was no longer a state of exhaustion. Whoosh! Xiang Nan let out a deep breath and slowly stood up, allowing the remaining medicinal herbs in his body to continue to nourish his body. He had just broken through to the 8th layer, so it was not appropriate for him to immediately break through to the 9th layer. His body still needed a short period of adaptation. A 1st-grade fire bathing pill was indeed a good thing. Finally, look at the east wall. On the first wooden shelf on the east wall, there were two small brocade boxes. When they opened, they were actually two priceless intermediate storage rings. Xiang Nan couldn't help but laugh and put one on his finger. A storage ring was a spatial ring. A primary storage ring could store 1 cubic meter of dead objects, an intermediate storage ring could store 10 cubic meters of dead objects, and a high-grade storage ring could store 100 cubic meters of dead objects. The starting price of an intermediate storage ring in the auction house was 3 million gold coins. Ordinary people simply couldn't afford to wear it. The other storage ring should be left to Grandpa. Looking back, there were 7 sets of gorgeous embroidered clothes hanging on the wall. Each set was magnificent, made of ice silk, and was extremely valuable. After the 7 sets of luxurious clothes, there was a small, pitch-black vest. This vest was jet black and heavy, but when held in his hand, it suddenly fell. 3rd grade profound snake leather armor, not bad. 3rd grade profound snake is equivalent to the origin returning realm. Although this leather armor does not carry any yuan qi defense, it is comparable to the skin defense of an origin returning realm expert. It can withstand 3 fatal strikes from an origin returning realm first layer expert. He put the black snake leather armor on his body on the spot, which could be considered as an additional life-saving treasure. Next, there was a wooden shelf under the east wall. On top of it was an ancient wooden box. Opening the wooden box, there was an uncovered book lying inside. Xiang Nan curiously picked up the book and flipped through it. He discovered that the book recorded the life of the owner of the treasure. The owner of this cave was called the Heavenly Thunder Martial King. He was a great figure 3,000 years ago. He possessed a rare heavenly-grade lightning vein talent. In just 50 years, he had already stepped onto the peak of martial arts, becoming a heavenly tribulation realm expert. However, this person was too obsessed with martial arts. He even reached the state of madness. He actually tried to break through to the heavenly tribulation realm to find a way to rise to a higher level. Thus, he devoted all of his life to learning and created a heaven-defying cultivation technique, the 9 transformations of thunder. However, because the 9 transformations of thunder were too heaven-defying, the heavenly lightning martial king himself had failed to cultivate and died from being devilish. Xiang Nan was completely stunned when he flipped through the contents of the next page. After a long time, Xiang Nan finally regained his senses, 9 transformations of thunder. This second half of the book is actually the incantation of 9 transformations of thunder. Only now did Xiang Nan realize how terrifying the 9 transformations of thunder were. This was simply a cultivation technique that shouldn't have appeared in the world. This was because cultivating the 9 transformations of thunder required absorbing a total of 9 types of divine lightning. If he truly succeeded in practicing the 9 transformations of thunder, he would possess the power to pierce through the heavens and earth, overturn the rivers and overturn the seas, and destroy a world with a flick of his finger. Divine lightning was a kind of ferocious lightning bred from heaven and earth. Every kind of divine lightning that descended on the world would definitely cause heaven and earth catastrophe. That was an existence that even martial arts experts would not dare to touch easily. After each type of divine lightning descended into the world, it would leave behind a lightning source. What was even more terrifying was that there was actually a thunder talisman on the last page of the cultivation technique. It was described in the book that this lightning talisman actually contained the lightning source of the white flame blazing lightning, which was ranked 17th on the divine lightning rankings. Xiang Nan held the lightning talisman and struggled in his heart. If he wanted to take revenge, he had to cultivate the 9 transformations of thunder, because the difference between his realm and Xian Qingzhu's was simply too great. That Xian Qingzhu might already be a divine martial realm expert. However, even the heavenly thunder martial king himself was unable to complete this 9 transformations of thunder. If he went to practice it himself, would he end up with the same fate as the heavenly thunder martial king? After thinking for a long time, Xiang Nan gritted his teeth and put away the lightning talisman. The martial king is a heavenly grade lightning vein, and I am a divine grade lightning vein. If he can't, maybe I can. Moreover, to practice the 9 transformations of thunder, the minimum requirement was to start from the Xiantian stage, so he still had some time to think about it. The only regret was that the 9 transformations of thunder was just a cultivation technique, and it did not contain any specific martial skill moves. When Xiang Nan handed the storage ring to Xiang Zhanxiong was stunned. This is an intermediate storage ring. It's even better than the basic storage ring I wore myself. Xiang Nan smiled and said, "Grandpa, open it and see what's inside." Xiang Zhanxiong opened his storage ring, and large amounts of gold coins and spirit herb pills poured out. At this moment, Xiang Zhanxiong was truly dumbfounded. After a while, he shouted, "Heaven help my Xiang clan." Xiang Nan replied, "Grandpa Li and I used to go to Black Wind Mountain to pick mushrooms and catch some game to eat. We accidentally found a stone door. I missed Grandpa Li last night and went there again. I didn't expect that the stone door would be opened. I took out all the things inside." Xiang Zhanxiong's eyes turned red. Each of these techniques was even more advanced than the Xiang clans. "Grandpa, I also found something in the cave that might be beneficial to your cultivation." Xiang Nan took out a small book, about 7 or 8 pages thick. Xiang Zhanxiong opened his eyes and said, "This is the way to break through the bottleneck of the heavenly Yuan realm." Of course, this book was written by Xiang Nan himself. The spirit herbs and pills needed to break through the bottleneck were all in his grandfather's storage ring. At this time, Xiang Zhanxiong was so excited that he was speechless that he ignored Xiang Nan for a long time. Xiang Nan smiled and whispered, "Grandfather, you should slowly study it yourself. Grandson, please leave." After leaving the secret room, it was already dawn. Xiang Nan immediately set off for Bluestone City and the City Lord's mansion. When Xiang Nan arrived at the City Lord's mansion, the entire mansion was filled with banquets and lanterns. All the people from the various clans in the towns were here. Xiang Nan took a deep breath and shouted, "Xiang clan, Xiang Nan, come to the banquet." With this voice, all the guests in the hall stopped and looked at Xiang Nan. "It's you, little bastard." Instantly, a furious curse rang out in the reception hall. 3 elders of the Wang clan had already rushed out. These 3 people were all experts of the Origin realm. All 3 of them were at the 7th level of the Origin realm. One of them was named Wang Rongshen. He was Wang Zhonglin's distant uncle. "Little bastard, how dare you come here to die?" Wang Rongshen's expression was not good. The surrounding guests whispered, "Look, that's Xiang Zhanxiong's grandson, right? Why is he here?" "Sigh, the Xiang clan has long since fallen into ruin. Isn't Zhanxiong's grandson coming to the City Lord's mansion to humiliate himself? Why bother? Heh, this brat must think that he is still some rich young master, shamelessly attending the wedding banquet." Everyone had different expressions. Some were watching the show, some were mocking, some were sympathetic, and some were pitiful. "What?" Xiang Nan shouted loudly, "I, Xiang Nan, have come to offer a gift to the City Lord." Is this the way the City Lord treats guests? In the reception hall, a tall and sturdy figure strode over. The City Lord was over 2 meters tall. The moment he stood at the entrance of the reception hall, he gave off tremendous pressure. Moreover, this person was at the third level of the heavenly Yuan realm. He could be said to be the #1 expert in the entire Blue Stone City. Xiang Nan. The city lord's expression was a little complicated as he said, "Why did you come here?" Chapter 6 Life and Death Contract. City Lord, he killed Zhong Lin. I want to tear him into pieces. Wang Rong's eyes burned with anger. However, Xiang Nan didn't even look at Wang Rongsheng, as if Wang Rongsheng was a mad dog barking alone. City Lord. Xiang Nan took out a scroll and opened it on the spot. This is a painting of ink and pill. The scenery, fish and insect on it, the beautiful green forest, can be said to be a masterpiece. It was normal for people to be arrogant and elegant, especially those who could come to the city lord's mansion. All of them were either rich or expensive. Everyone had great eyesight and immediately caused an uproar. I didn't expect Zhang Xiong to still have such a good thing. The city lord took the painting and his expression softened slightly. Xiang Nan, your grandfather and I are good friends. Leave now. I can help you stop the Wang clan, whispered the city lord in Xiang Nan's ear. Xiang Nan smiled instead. I haven't finished my work yet, so I'm not in a hurry to leave. City Lord. Wang Rongsheng was furious. He killed my nephew and was so arrogant. I must kill him today. The city lord waved his hand and interrupted Wang Rongsheng. He frowned at Xiang Nan and said, "Why are you such an ignorant child? You've caused a great disaster, but you don't know how to advance or retreat." The guests all shook their heads as they looked at Xiang Nan. They thought to themselves, this kid is spoiled. Can't you even tell that the city lord is helping you? However, the expression on Xiang Nan's face subsided slightly as he said in a deep voice, "A great calamity? Lord City Lord, let me ask you." As he spoke, Xiang Nan pointed in the direction of the Wang clan and said, "His Wang clan caused the destruction of the Xiang Manor. Use a red ring to trap the Xiang Manor like a livestock. Whoever stepped out of the red line will be killed without mercy." What? His Wang clan just bullied us. You and everyone else watched coldly. My Xiang clan only killed one person from his Wang clan, yet it's considered to have caused a great calamity. The city lord was speechless after being asked by Xiang Nan, his face filled with shame. The surrounding guests also shut their mouths. Are you here to reason? Suddenly, a voice came from inside the reception hall, followed by a person slowly stepping out. This person was wearing a loose snow-white robe. He was the current head of the Wang clan, an expert at the first level of the heavenly Yuan realm, Wang Changhe. Wang Changhe put his hands behind his back and said in a condescending manner, "The world of martial arts is originally like this. Reason doesn't work. It depends on who is strong." Xiang Nan nodded. Everything depends on strength, right? Remember what you said. Xiang Nan turned his head to look at the city lord. I will register for the martial arts town election 2 days later. Will I be able to obtain protection during this period? The city lord's eyes lit up and he said, "That's right." But the city lord hesitated for a moment and said, "The registration ended 2 days ago. Now. It doesn't matter." Wang Changhe interrupted again and said, "Didn't he want to participate in the martial arts town election? I will recommend him to participate. But there is one condition, Xiang Nan, do you dare to accept it?" Xiang Nan laughed loudly, "Patriarch Wang, just say it." Wang Changhe nodded, "You have already violated the rules of the town election by asking to participate. However, as long as you sign the life and death treaty, I will personally recommend you." Life and death treaty. Everyone exploded. Killing was not allowed in the tournament of Martial Town. But a life and death treaty would be different. In other words, others could kill Xiang Nan, but Xiang Nan could not. At this moment, the clans of the other towns under Blue Stone City were also watching the show, and there were also people who started to heckle. Xiang Nan agreed without hesitation. The city lord is so angry. He thinks that your future life is too ungrateful. Can't you see that they are trying to kill you on an excuse? You actually agreed. I hope you, the city lord patted Xiang Nan on the shoulder and sighed, I hope you can show some outstanding skills. Come on, the city defense corps, listen to the order and escort Xiang Nan back to the manor. Stay in the manor until the town election is over. Wang Changhe sneered and watched Xiang Nan leave. Everyone in the streets and alleys was watching the show. Who were all the youths protected by the city guards? Xiang Nan did a good job. He went to the city lord's mansion alone and even dragged the city defense army over. In the past 2 days, Xiang Nan did not leave the house. He used a large wooden bucket to crush the spiritual herbs he needed into powder and pour them into clean water. As for himself, he was immersed in that bucket of potions and meditated cross-legged, absorbing the spiritual energy between heaven and earth, continuously raising his cultivation level. Each of these herbs was of exceptional quality, so expensive that it made one's flesh hurt. However, Xiang Nan didn't care about it and put a lot of them into the water. With his tyrannical divine talent, he crazily advanced to the 9th level of body tempering within a day. The cultivation method he used was still the cultivation method of the rushing lightning spear. Before he could find a new lightning meridian cultivation method, he could only make do with it. After the town selection is complete, I have to go to the largest auction house in Blue Stone City. Perhaps I can find something related to the lightning meridian technique there. On the morning of the 3rd day, today was the day of the Martial Town election, and Xiang Nan finally opened his eyes abruptly. At that moment, the spiritual qi in the world suddenly increased in speed and frantically entered Xiang Nan's body. Only a faint muffled sound could be heard from his dantian. Advanced. Xiantian Realm, 1st level. Xiang Nan slightly raised his right hand, and a translucent ball of gas slowly rotated in his palm. This was the 1st day. With the blessing of the previous weather, his basic strength instantly became 2100 Jin. Time to go. Xiang Nan cleaned his body briefly, swallowed another grade 1 marrow cleansing pill, and pushed the door open. This precious marrow cleansing pill was able to consolidate Xiang Nan's body, which had just been raised to a higher realm, and immediately stabilize his unstable realm, making him look like an experienced Xiantian realm expert. Xiang Nan's parents came from a large family and knew a lot about it. They knew that they couldn't go to the town elections, otherwise they would draw a lot of unnecessary hatred towards Xiang Nan. On the day Xiang Nan participated in the town elections, the Xiang family held a funeral for Li Zhong. This time, the martial arts town selection was held at the same time in every town in Blue Stone City. Each town was held separately, and outstanding martial arts talents were selected. The town election is limited to 16 to 18 years of age. After the martial arts town selection is over, it will be the time for the various sects to pick people. They will be called the martial arts city selection. At that time, all the outstanding people in the town will participate together. Moreover, the restriction would be relaxed to between the ages of 16 and 20, and outstanding martial arts youths would be selected by various sects. There were 6 families in Bluestone Town participating in the town elections. Among them, the Wang family, Li family, and Mo family of the 3 great families were enemies of the Xiang family. An empty arena was placed in the middle of the arena, and the spectators of the Bluestone town had already occupied their seats. At this time, a person suddenly slammed into Xiang Nan's shoulder fiercely. Turning around, he saw that it was the Wang family. "Little bastard, you really dare to come?" A Wang clan disciple coldly said to Xiang Nan, "I'll personally kill you later." Immediately after, another group of people entered the arena. This time, they were from the Mo clan. The people in front of the Mo clan laughed strangely and made a gesture of beheading Xiang Nan. After that, the Li clan's people also came. They patted Xiang Nan on the shoulder and whispered, "Xiang Nan, don't worry, I won't let the Wang clan succeed. Because, before they do, I will kill you in advance." The people of the three families and each team welcomed the cheers of the spectators. After all the clans entered, Xiang Nan finally entered the arena without any hesitation. When he entered the arena, the whole arena was booed. These people were trying to curry favor with the three great clans. Xiang Nan smiled and said, "Three great clans? Ha! What you said to me just now. How did you say it? How did you swallow it?" Chapter 7 City Election begins. The first was the drawing of lots. There was a martial arts expert from the city lord's mansion as the chief referee, and 4 deputy referees were in charge of observing the 4 corners of the arena. The referee announced loudly, "There are a total of 320 participants in the Bluestone Town Martial Arts Town Election. The first round is the arena competition. Each of the 2 contestants is a group. Draw lots to determine the group. There are a total of 160 groups. Let's compete on the arena. In the end, the top 40 contestants will automatically advance and participate in the martial arts city selection in a month's time." Afterwards, the referee announced that 320 contestants had come forward to draw lots. When Xiang Nan went to draw lots, there were quite a few people in the audience who flattered the Wang clan and angrily scolded Xiang Nan, doing their utmost to insult him. Xiang Nan turned his head, looked at the shouts and handed the number token in his hand to the referee. The referee nodded and wrote Xiang Nan's name on the stone slab behind him, marking 16 behind him. On behalf of Xiang Nan, he was the 16th contestant. In the end, a youth named Zhang Chuan was also selected as 16. Seeing this result, everyone in the audience booed. They felt very regretful that Xiang Nan had not been able to draw with the Wang clan. The referee spoke and began to announce the specific rules. The duration of each group's final battle shall not exceed 5 minutes, and the opponent shall not be killed. Alright, let's invite the first group of contestants to the stage. The referee raised his right hand. At this time, 2 contestants walked up to the arena. One of them was named Lu Kai, and the other was Wang Jinghai from the Wang clan. Wang Jinghai was only 16 years old, but he was already at the 4th level of the Xiantian realm. Lu Kai's strength was also extraordinary, and at the age of 18, he was at the Xiantian 1st layer. My God, look, that's Wang Jinghai. He's one of the Wang clan's young geniuses. The crowd immediately boiled. That's right. I heard that Wang Jinghai has a talent for earth veins of the mortal stage. The scene was in chaos, and after Lu Kai heard about the earth vein talent of the mortal stage, his expression changed slightly. Earth veins represented the potential for defense. Wang Jinghai smiled faintly and leapt up into the arena. With just this move, he won the applause of the crowd. In the spectator stands and in the direction of the VIP seats, the Li family patriarch smiled and said, "Chanhe, Jinghai is a very good child. He is indeed a genius who possesses the affinity of the 5 elements, especially the affinity of the earth vein. It is truly rare. Wang Changhe cupped his fists and saluted, brotherly, you're too polite. Your Li clan's youths are also extraordinary heroes. Haha. The two patriarchs looked at each other and smiled, both feeling extremely proud. Now I declare. The referee raised his right hand and quickly sliced down his palm. Begin. On the arena, Wang Jinghai and Lu Kai stood opposite each other. Wang Jinghai waved to Lu Kai, come, let me give you 3 moves. Lu Kai's face was filled with anger as he rushed towards Wang Jinghai, you underestimated me too much. Wang Jinghai shook his head in disdain and turned to look in the direction of Xiang Nan. Furthermore, under the gazes of the crowd, he made a gesture of beheading Xiang Nan. Where are you looking? Lu Kai leapt into the air and swept his fierce right whip leg towards the back of Wang Jinghai's neck. This whip leg even brought with it the whistling sound of the wind. It could be said to be extremely powerful. On the other side, Xiang Nan didn't dodge Wang Jinghai's fiery and murderous gaze and just looked at Wang Jinghai indifferently. Suddenly, with a muffled sound, Lu Kai's leg ruthlessly swept across the back of Wang Jinghai's neck. But in the end, the next scene shocked everyone. Wang Jinghai was hit by the whip leg and only took half a step sideways. He then turned around to look at Lu Kai and shrugged his shoulders, is that all? Lu Kai's expression changed drastically. Come, there are still 2 more moves. Wang Jinghai smiled and waved at Lu Kai. This time, even the young geniuses of the Mo clan and the Li clan had serious expressions on their faces. Jinghai, this brat Mo Chi of the Mo clan frowned. He hasn't fought with him for half a year. His defense is already so abnormal. Looking at the arena, Lu Kai took a deep breath. He took 3 steps back and began to condense his yuan qi. A faint glow wrapped around Lu Kai's entire right arm. Oh. The weather first. Wang Jinghai smiled faintly, come on, you use the weather to attack, and I use the weather to defend. After saying that, Wang Jinghai straightened his chest, and a layer of pre-weather that was much denser than Lu Kai attached itself to his body. After Lu Kai finished gathering, he sprinted forward and threw a heavy punch at Wang Jinghai. Wang Jinghai's Xiantian was instantly moved to his forehead, and his head was actually pushed forward. Lu Kai's fists collided heavily with Wang Jinghai's forehead. Peng's muffled sound was followed by a cracking sound. Lu Kai was actually knocked backwards by Wang Jinghai's fist, and his arm bone was broken. Hiss, the scene was filled with gasps of cold air. I admit defeat. Lu Kai clutched his broken arm, his face ashen with pain, large drops of cold sweat. After the atmosphere froze for a moment, the crowd immediately cheered and shook the heavens. Wang Jinghai defeated Lu Kai without a single move. What heaven-defying strength was this? I haven't even finished 3 moves. Wang Jinghai shook his forehead in disdain. Without looking at Lu Kai, he turned back to look at Xiang Nan and said, Xiang Nan, you'd better pray that you don't meet me. The first winner, Wang Jinghai. The referee announced on the spot, and then said, the next match will be played by both sides. In the next 11 matches, there weren't too many bright spots. Even though a few youths from the 3 great clans had appeared on the stage, they quickly defeated their opponents. But no one else showed Wang Jinghai's overwhelming advantage. Until the 12th match, Xiantian 4th layer expert Mo Chi appeared. The auditorium was boiling again. It's the Mo clan's Mo Chi. He, Wang Jinghai of the Wang clan, and Li Lingfeng of the Li clan are known as the 3 heroes. That's right, he really is a young hero. I heard that he also possesses the affinity of the 5 elements. He seems to be a mortal grade fire vein. What was even more remarkable was that Imochi's opponent was a Li clan's Li Yuntian. He was 18 years old and was at the Xiantian 3rd layer. The battle between the two of them was very interesting. Imochi pulled out a snow-white longsword from behind him. He poured the weather into the sword and saw that there was a dazed air current on the sword. It's indeed a fire vein. Wang Changhe nodded and said, "This kind of flame affinity is too rare. It is worthy of being as famous as my Jinghai." The airflow around the sword was caused by the temperature. Anyone who looked at it would feel terrified. Li Yuntian's expression was incomparably grave. He drew out his saber and poured the weather into it. He rushed towards Imochi. Every time the two weapons collided, Li Yuntian was knocked back a few steps. His face turned green and red, and he felt extremely uncomfortable. Finally, he was knocked out of the arena in the 8th move. Imochi casually carried his sword behind him and raised his head calmly. The two of them were only one level away. Especially since Li Yuntian was a genius from one of the 3 great clans. Imochi used this crushing strength to defeat Li Yuntian, who was 2 years older, and his shocking power was not inferior to Wang Jinghai's. Chapter 8 Everyone Wants Him Dead. The gazes of Wang Jinghai and Imochi met in midair, as if the audience could feel the fiery gaze colliding with each other. Damn it! If Wang Jinghai and Imochi could fight, then this trip would not have been in vain. One of the spectators clenched his fists and said excitedly. Afterwards, it was Xiang Nan's turn to enter the 16th match. After Xiang Nan and Zhang Chuang stepped onto the arena at the same time, the referee deliberately announced, "Since Xiang Nan has signed a life and death treaty, killing Xiang Nan is not against the rules." The scene immediately burst into applause. This was the kind of thrilling, hot-blooded competition everyone wanted. These spectators didn't care about human lives at all. They even hoped that the two sides would fight to the death. A youth's death arena represented a sad end to his short life, but to the audience, it was just a good performance, a conversation after tea. The indifference in the hearts of the people had already reached this level. What was even more exaggerated was that a large number of spectators had voluntarily set up a gamble. Moreover, it was a gamble specifically aimed at Xiang Nan. The bet was when Xiang Nan would die. How many battles did he die in? Moreover, the odds were astonishingly low. The number of spectators betting on Xiang Nan's victory was 0. There were a total of 20,000 spectators at the town election. Everyone bet, but none of them voted for Xiang Nan to leave the town election alive. Xiang Nan. A spectator stood up and shouted at Xiang Nan, "I bet half of my worth on you. You must die in the first match. If you die in the second match, I will lose a lot of money." Another spectator stood up and laughed, "I will only die if I suppress you in the second match. Xiang Nan, even if you are beaten like a dead dog, you must climb out of the arena. Don't die in the first match." Zhang Chuang smiled and said, "Xiang Nan, you should just admit defeat. I don't want to offend the Wang clan by killing you. I just need you to kneel down and call me grandpa and I'll let you go." "Oh right, I heard that your grandfather is a cripple. I presume that you are also a cripple. Why bother to humiliate yourself?" The reality was such an irony. In the past, the Xiang clan was a clan where many people were kneeling and crawling to curry favor. Now, the trees were scattered and the walls were pushed down by the crowd. Xiang Nan smiled faintly. He took out his spear and said, "Leave this to you. I really don't know what's good for me." Zhang Chuang shook his head and rushed towards Xiang Nan with his sword in hand. "Grandpa, I gave you a chance, but you gave me no face. No wonder I was ruthless." The moment Zhang Chuang rushed forward, the entire audience held their breaths, feeling extremely nervous. The youngsters from the Wang clan, Mo clan, Li clan, and the three great clans also frowned. They didn't want Xiang Nan to die at the hands of anyone else. "Try this move of mine, moon setting slash." Zhang Chuang shouted as he drew a large arc on the sword in his hand and slashed towards Xiang Nan. Xiang Nan raised his hand and shot. This spear actually sent Zhang Chuang flying with his sword. Zhang Chuanpu coughed out a mouthful of blood, and his entire body flew off like a flying spin, falling out of the arena in a spiral shape. The entire arena was completely silent. One move. Everyone was stunned. They couldn't even find an adjective to describe their shock at this moment. Xiang Nan walked to the edge of the arena alone and said to Zhang Chuang, who was lying half dead on the ground, "Who did you call trash just now?" "Sorry, I didn't hear you clearly." Zhang Chuang's throat rumbled a few times, but he didn't say a word. Blood flowed out of his mouth. The young experts of the three great clans looked at each other, but they did not react after a long time. The next match was still very long. Xiang Nan simply sat cross-legged and began to taste his Thunder Vein talent. According to Xiang Nan's own actual exploration, if he activated his Lightning Meridian innate, his strength would instantly triple to a terrifying level. That was 6,300 gene. This is the current limit. Of course, the price of doing so is also very high, and that is to burn a large number of pre-weather. Therefore, when fighting, you should try to minimize unnecessary consumption and avoid overloading your Lightning Meridian stats. Xiang Nan didn't even watch a single match in the next arena match, so he didn't care. However, it was worth mentioning that the Li clan had produced a genius, Li Lingfeng. This person did not have the affinity of the five elements, but his talent was spiritual. Mortal, spirit, earth, heaven. With 4 levels of talent, the higher the level, the greater the potential of a martial artist. Although Li Lingfeng did not possess the affinity of the 5 elements, just his talent in the mortal stage had already caused everyone to go crazy with envy. As expected, Li Lingfeng, a 16-year-old Xiantian 4 Dan expert, defeated his opponent by an overwhelming margin. After a total of 160 groups of matches were played, it was already late. All the contestants rested for one night and continued the next day. Of the 320 people, 160 were eliminated, leaving 116. The next day, the competition continued. 160 contestants drew lots for the second round. Xiang Nan also picked an insignificant figure and won, while the other contestants' matches were no longer fresh. 160 people, 80 eliminated, leaving 80 people. Among them, Xiang Nan won and advanced. That afternoon, the third round of elimination began and ended successfully. 40 people were eliminated, leaving 40 people. Xiang Nan still advanced. These 40 people were definitely eligible to enter the city. However, it was worth mentioning that in all 3 matches, Xiang Nan had defeated his enemies in one move. Moreover, he had never really used the spear in his hand. This gave the audience a huge amount of expectation. Was Xiang Nan lucky or was his strength heaven-defying? Obviously, after the 3 matches, Xiang Nan had caused all the spectators to lose all their money, and the biggest winner was the city lord. But in the end, the next stage of the competition truly ignited the enthusiasm of all the spectators. This was because this stage of the competition was a competition for the top 40 spots. Moreover, the rules of the competition were extremely exaggerated. The referee stood on the arena and raised a finger. At this stage, the top 40 contestants are going to have a will battle. The cheers of the spectators were deafening when they heard the words, "Chariot Battle." The referee waited for a long time. After the cheers, he continued, "Let the audience vote for a contestant. The first one to stand on the arena. Then, let the other contestants take the initiative to challenge him. If the first contestant wins, then stay on the arena and continue to meet other contestants' challenges until he loses, or until he wins completely." This was another big bomb. The audience cheered and roared, the veins on their necks bulging. This kind of rule was clearly eye-catching. And it was aimed at Xiang Nan. Because even with his toes, he could imagine who the audience would vote for first. It was also because of this rule that the gambling game was opened again. Similarly, none of the spectators placed a bet on Xiang Nan, because Xiang Nan could not leave alive. Xiang Nan's support rate was still 0. Those spectators who had lost money earlier would not hesitate to bet more chips on Xiang Nan's death. "All right." The referee clapped his hands and said, "Voting begins." The results came out. Of the 23,000 spectators present, 22,940 voted for Xiang Nan. Only 60 people voted for someone else. After the referee announced the result of the election, the atmosphere at the scene instantly exploded. Chapter 9 Libation Shi. The audience roared. "Xiang Nan, for the sake of my silver coins, please die. You'd better die more quickly. Xiang Nan, I bet all my money on you. You must die." Xiang Nan looked at the judge and said, "Your city lord's mansion is a dealer. I want to ask, if I bet on myself, what is the odds?" The referee said, "Let's put it this way. Our casino is different from the casino. But if you vote for yourself and you win, then you can take all 3.1 million. All right." Xiang Nan casually tossed out a gold coin and was caught by the referee. The referee nodded, "According to the rules, if you bet a gold coin, you will win." The curses from the crowd shook the heavens, while Xiang Nan maintained a faint smile. In the shadows, the city lord quietly observed Xiang Nan and nodded his head in praise. No matter how strong Xiang Nan is in battle, just his unchanging calmness against 10,000 people is worth admiring. All right. At the edge of the arena, the referee clapped his hands to silence everyone and said, "Next, the chariot war is about to begin. I have a request." Xiang Nan raised a finger and said, "Give me a jar of wine." "Sure." The referee immediately ordered someone to carry a jar of wine and some bowls to the arena. Xiang Nan slapped open the wine jar's sealing mud and drank it all in one gulp, happy. "I'll do it." Someone below the stage raised his hand angrily and a Xiantian first stage martial artist jumped onto the stage. The other experts all hugged their shoulders and watched. The stronger the person, the more they wanted to step back to show that they were extraordinary. The contestant flipped onto the stage and said, "My name is." Xiang Nan shook his head. "Cut the crap and do it." The contestant was instantly enraged. He held the sword in his right hand and injected the weather into the sword, causing the sword to begin to tremble slightly. Sure enough, it's different from the previous arena competition. The contestants are very strong. Xiang Nan smiled and took a step forward. Lightning energy surged in his dantian. The first thing he did was to inject a spear into the sky and sweep it out, sending the contestant flying out of the arena with a loud boom. One move to subdue the enemy. "It's still one move," an audience exclaimed. The referee was a little unable to react. After a moment of shock, he said, Xiang Nan wins. Xiang Nan poured himself a bowl of wine and drank it all in one gulp, smashing the bowl onto the arena. I'll do it. Another contestant jumped onto the arena. This person was also at the Xiantian first layer. This person wanted to introduce himself, but when he saw Xiang Nan walking towards him with big strides, he closed his mouth and ran towards Xiang Nan. The moment he was about to attack, Xiang Nan attacked even faster. Before the contestant could lift his right hand, he felt the cold spear tip pressing against his throat. Xiang Nan said indifferently, "You're already dead." With that, he turned the spear around and sent the opponent flying with a loud bang. It was still a single move to suppress the enemy. Faced with the hostility of the audience, Xiang Nan took a bowl of wine and wiped his mouth. "Good wine. So good. I'll do it." Another contestant stepped onto the stage. Because of his previous experience, this contestant no longer introduced himself and directly attacked Xiang Nan. Xiang Nan, a frightening dragon, went out to sea. First, the weather was mixed with a powerful lightning-attributed martial skill, and with a single shot, he knocked the enemy over. Under the dumbfounded expressions of countless spectators, Xiang Nan drank another large bowl of wine, not enough to see. Something really capable. "Jinghai, are you coming on? This kid's strength is beyond our expectations," a young man from the Wang clan asked in a low voice. Wang Jinghai's expression was serious as he said, "This kid's progress is exaggerated. But since he has already reached this stage, I'm not in a hurry to step onto the stage. Mo Chi and the others haven't moved yet. Let's watch from the sidelines." Then, the 4th, 5th, 8th, 10th, and 15th contestants all came on stage, all of them defeated by Xiang Nan's attack. At this moment, there was not a single sound in the Colosseum. The audience could not even cry, let alone laugh. This guy, is he really going to fight 39 of them? Oh my God, I'm not dreaming, am I? Previously, the audience had hoped that Xiang Nan would die, but Xiang Nan was using one person and one gun to frantically turn the situation around in the town election. This scene was completely unexpected. When the 20th challenger arrived, the spectators finally rekindled their hopes. The last 19 people were all young experts from the 3 great clans. They're finally on stage. Wang Jingtian, 18 years old, Xiantian's second layer, said a handsome man as he stepped onto the stage with a long saber in his hand. Seeing this person, Xiang Nan laughed loudly, "Good job. I'm waiting for the people from your 3 great clans." Wang Jingtian shouted and rushed towards Xiang Nan, "Let me see what you can do." Wang Jingtian chopped down with a half-moon slash. This saber strike brought with it a fierce weather, like a crescent moon descending from the sky. Its lethality soared to 2,700 Jin. Xiang Nan did not use any tricks. The most straightforward revenge was undoubtedly to use violence to counter violence. The thunder energy within Xiang Nan's body roared, and the weather quickly rose. A spear swung out, carrying a strength of 3,000 Jin. Boom! The arena was trembling. Wang Jingtian didn't even let out a miserable scream and fainted when he flew backwards. Weak. Looking at Wang Jingtian flying out of the arena, Xiang Nan drank a large bowl of wine. "I'll do it." The Mo clan jumped onto the arena and said, 18-year-old Xiantian second layer martial artist, Mo Hongying. Mo Hongying's body moved like a leopard, bringing with it strong winds. He pulled out 3 sword flowers from his sword and roared, 100 flowers dazzle. Every single sword flower was a bunch of weather before it was released. Sword chi could not be measured purely by strength, because it was extremely sharp. Xiang Nan waved his spear with one hand. The spear was like a dragon. A fan-shaped spear chi shot out, instantly shattering Mo Hongying's 3 sword flowers. Following that, the spear body was very close, and the spear tip pierced through Mo Hongying's left leg, blasting him out of the arena. Too weak. Xiang Nan drank a large bowl of wine and looked around. Who else? At this moment, the entire arena was so quiet that the needles could be heard. Everyone was stunned. Xiang Nan held a spear in his hand and pointed it at the sky. How did you humiliate my Xiang clan back then? Today, I want to return them to you one by one. He shouted. What an arrogant and domineering little bastard. A person from the Li clan rushed out. This person quickly ran under the arena and suddenly jumped 5 meters away from the arena. Slashed the wind. The young man from the Li clan roared in a low voice, his sword coming from the sky. This sword brought along 2 strong winds, which formed a whirlpool and smashed towards Xiang Nan with great might. The audience immediately clenched their fists in excitement. It's the Li clan's cultivation technique, wind severing. This person was a Xiantian 3rd layer expert, far surpassing the previous Xiantian expert. Xiang Nan's waist was straight and he laughed loudly. So what if he was at the Xiantian 3rd layer? This time, Xiang Nan charged forward like a fierce dragon. He wrapped the gun's body around the stronger weather, and the gun's body even started to tremble slightly. The weather continued to soar, 4,000 kilograms of strength. The basic strength was tripled from the terrifying lightning vein attribute. Boom! The Li clan expert even had his sword shattered by Xiang Nan. A piece of broken sword fragment floated in the sky, but the bones of the Li family's entire body were broken and they fainted under the stage. Isn't there anyone who can fight? Xiang Nan drew his gun and stood upright, proudly sweeping his gaze across the entire arena. The entire arena was completely silent. The following battles became fiercer and fiercer. The challengers grew stronger and stronger, but Xiang Nan crushed the entire arena with unimaginable strength. The entire town election seemed to have become a stage for Xiang Nan alone. After knocking over one person, he drank a bowl of wine. Weak. Weak. Too weak. Too weak to see. Everyone present was filled with Xiang Nan's voice. Those weak words caused the faces of the 3 great clans to be disgraced. The young masters that the 3 great clans had cultivated with all their effort were actually so weak against this destitute disciple of Xiang Nan's. At this moment, the faces of the 3 masters were ashen, as ugly as if they had eaten a dead mouse. Xiang Nan, on the other hand, grew more and more courageous. He didn't even rest for a minute, defeating 36 powerful enemies in a row. In the end, only Wang Jinghai, Mo Qi, and Li Lingfeng were left. The 3 of them exchanged a glance and saw that Wang Jinghai's expression was extremely ugly. He said in a deep voice, "It seems that only the 3 of us can punish him." Mo Qi rubbed his wrist and said, "Let him see the heavens and the earth. Otherwise, it would be annoying for him to continue being so arrogant." Li Lingfeng laughed loudly. "I thought this town election would be very boring. I never thought that someone from the Xiang clan would be able to let us stretch our muscles and bones. I didn't expect that, but that's good. The 3 of us don't have to hide our strength anymore." Xiang Nan hugged the wine jar and poured a few mouthfuls of liquor into his mouth. Then, he smashed the jar onto the arena and laughed loudly, "You bullied my Xiang clan. Today, I will turn around and bully all of you by myself. What 3 heroes, what 3 great experts, let's go together." Chapter 10 Scarlet Fire Sword. What? Is that kid crazy? He wants to fight 3 times. Huh, I actually bought it right. I bought him the last time he died. This time, he made a big profit. The audience boiled over. Xiang Nan proposed to fight 3 of them one at a time. This was a situation that had never occurred in the previous year's town election arena tournament. Someone asked, but someone in the audience shouted, 1 versus 3. Is that in line with the rules of the game? After some thought, the referee nodded and said, since Xiang Nan is the one who accepts the challenge, as long as Xiang Nan is willing, it will not be against the rules. This could be considered a loophole in the rules. No one thought that the challenged would be willing to fight alone against everyone. Therefore, there was no specific provision for such a situation. Since there was no specific provision, it was not a violation of the rules. Wang Jinghai, Mo Qi, and Li Lingfeng exchanged glances with each other, their expressions extremely ugly. You're too arrogant. Wang Jinghai's face was gloomy as he took the lead in jumping onto the arena. It seemed that the 3 great masters had their own pride, and it was impossible for them to accept 1 versus 3. As Wang Jinghai spoke, he took out a set of thick black armor from his low-grade storage ring and began to slowly wear it. That's... Mo Qi frowned and said, Black Kuei battle armor, high-grade spirit-grade protective equipment. The audience clamored. Protectors were also considered weapons, sharing the same level algorithm. The lowest grade was mortal grade, and then spirit grade. Weapons and protective equipment of spirit grade all had the ability to enhance the weather first. Li Lingfeng nodded silently. Looks like Wang Jinghai took out all the treasures of the housekeeper. Xiang Nan did not expect that Wang Jinghai would use such a powerful defensive armor. He silently calculated in his heart that high-grade spirit-grade protective equipment could resist at least 3,500 gene of attack power. As for the spirit armor, it could be enhanced by the first weather. After Wang Jinghai's own first weather enhanced the black Kuei armor, he should be able to withstand a maximum of 4,200 gene of attack power. This was only the defensive power of the armor itself. This terrifying defensive power was simply a nightmare for a Xiantian realm martial artist. Even a Xiantian 9th layer martial artist would only have a strength of 2,900 gene. Previously, I had always used one move to defeat the enemy. I wasted 1/3 of my time on the weather first, and the last 2/3 needed to be used properly. Xiang Nan's expression was solemn. His lightning meridian talent allowed him to erupt at most 3 times his strength, or 6,300 gene. However, this eruption was extremely terrifying to the previous weather. 2/3 of the initial weather was barely enough to erupt 3 times. After 3 times, he would immediately fall into a weak state. This was also one of the reasons why Xiang Nan wanted to fight 3 enemies at once. He wanted to use his strongest explosion period to deal with 3 enemies at once. It seems impossible now. Wang Jinghai was already dressed in battle armor. After the referee announced the start of the match, he rushed towards Xiang Nan. This black Kuei battle armor was too thick. It slowed down a portion of Wang Jinghai's flexibility. Xiang Nan first tentatively exploded with twice his strength, and with a strength of 4,200 gene, he shot Wang Jinghai in the chest. With a loud bang from Peng, Wang Jinghai was sent flying backwards and landed on the edge of the arena. Hiss! The entire arena was gasping for breath. You actually have such powerful strength? Wang Jinghai stood up in disbelief. The 4,200 gene attack power was the critical point of the Black Kuei battle armor's defense, so Wang Jinghai didn't suffer any damage. Xiang Nan furrowed his brows and looked down at the gun in his hand. He thought to himself, indeed. Numerous cracks had already appeared on the spear's tip, and with a loud crash, the entire spear tip was scattered into pieces on the ground. Ha ha ha. Wang Jinghai laughed loudly. Your tattered mortal-grade spear also wants to fight against my high-grade spiritual-grade protective gear. Xiang Nan's mortal-grade spear was simply unable to withstand such a powerful attack and was still shattered. It's my turn. Wang Jinghai suddenly leapt up. The terrifying surface of the black Kuei battle armor howled before the weather. His entire body was like a giant boulder falling from the sky, fiercely smashing down toward Xiang Nan. Xiang Nan immediately poured the weather into his legs and dodged, while Wang Jinghai smashed into the arena where Xiang Nan was just a moment ago. There was a loud boom, and the entire arena was cracked open by Wang Jinghai. Too scary, the audience exclaimed. That arena was made of earth crystal stones. It was actually able to be blasted open by Wang Jinghai's attack. Wang Jinghai became even more arrogant as he roared as he charged towards Xiang Nan. You don't have any weapons, how can you resist me? Xiang Nan frowned, but a cold light flashed in his eyes. Without weapons, you can't be crippled. Before he could finish speaking, Xiang Nan's voice flickered rapidly. After drawing a large arc, he not only dodged Wang Jinghai's attack, but even arrived behind Wang Jinghai. In the next moment, Xiang Nan's hands pierced into Wang Jinghai's armor at the same time. Following that, the weather erupted, and his hands actually tore off Wang Jinghai's shoulders. What, you? Wang Jinghai was shocked. Clang! Xiang Nan threw two thick shoulder pads down the arena. He twisted his wrists and moved his body, ready for the next attack. Although the armor is extremely defensive, your Wang Jinghai's speed is not as fast as mine, Xiang Nan. Could it be that I can't rely on this advantage to remove your armor? A trace of fear appeared in Wang Jinghai's eyes. He hadn't expected Xiang Nan to have such strength with his bare hands. One had to know that the black Kuei battle armor had adherence. That was about the same as his own defense. In other words, unless Xiang Nan used more than 4,200 gene of strength, he would not be able to remove the black Kuei battle armor. The panicked Wang Jinghai didn't have time to think too much. He hurriedly launched a fierce charge towards Xiang Nan. The weather beneath his feet erupted, causing his entire body to rush out. His strength and speed had increased unprecedentedly. Xiang Nan once again circled Wang Jinghai's front at a faster speed. His body was like a flexible cheetah, and he suddenly climbed onto Wang Jinghai's back. At the same time, Xiang Nan's hands had already lifted the armor on Wang Jinghai's back. At this instant, a sharp first-day sky suddenly shot out from below the arena. The weather was like sword chi, approaching Xiang Nan's head. This sudden change made it impossible for anyone to dodge, but Xiang Nan's perception was incomparably sensitive. In the blink of an eye, Xiang Nan decisively gave up on tearing Wang Jinghai apart and flicked his body backwards. The sword chi flew out close to the arena, and with a whoosh, a corner of the arena was cut off. The cut was as smooth as a mirror. Looking at the arena, there was already one more person. It was IMMORTAL. You really can't wait any longer. Xiang Nan sneered and glanced at the sword in IMMORTAL's hand. The sword in IMMORTAL's hand was no longer the weapon he had used earlier, but had been temporarily replaced. The entire body of the sword was pale red, and without pouring in through the previous weather, it carried a faint temperature. IMMORTAL pulled the sword into a sword flower and said, "Scarlet Fire Sword, a high-grade spirit weapon." Everyone was in an uproar. Another high-grade spirit weapon. Chapter 11 One Peanut. With a weapon of this level, the power of the sword chi released could no longer be measured purely by its strength. This was because the sword chi did not belong to the attack power, but to the sharp cutting power. At this moment, Wang Jinghai no longer cared about his dignity. He roared in a low voice, "Mo Chi, I'll charge from the front, and you'll slay him from the side." After saying that, Wang Jinghai roared angrily. Relying on the strong weather, he rushed towards Xiang Nan and completely sealed off Xiang Nan's frontal line of defense. As for Mo Chi, he waited for an opportunity to attack. He swam beside Wang Jinghai. The scarlet flame sword in his hand was already buzzing because of the abundance of the previous weather. The sharp sword chi was ready to deal a fatal blow at any moment. "Good job." Xiang Nan's eyes erupted with a bright light. Although he couldn't lure Li Lingfeng out, it was still worth it to seriously injure the two of them. Xiang Nan did not have nowhere to hide as everyone had expected. Instead, he unexpectedly launched a counterattack against Wang Jinghai, who had the strongest defense. "What?" Mo Chi was shocked. Xiang Nan rushed out abruptly. He stabbed his legs into a sideways horse step and spread out his fingers. His entire right hand was wrapped in the weather and was ruthlessly stamped on the armor on Wang Jinghai's chest. In that instant, the lightning meridian talent suddenly exploded. The power of Xiang Nan's palm exploded to 6,300 jin. With a single palm strike, he heavily struck the high-grade spirit-grade battle armor. The terrifying power of the lightning vein had forcefully imprinted an inch-deep palm print on the black Kuei battle armor's chest. A muffled boom rang out. The voice was deep and terrifying, causing Wang Jinghai's entire armor to instantly disintegrate. Thick pieces of armor scattered in all directions. The three masters stood up at the same time, their eyes wide open, as if they had seen a ghost in broad daylight. The black Kuei battle armor was blasted apart by Xiang Nan. Wang Jinghai coughed out a large mouthful of blood. His internal organs were all shaken by a terrifying force. In that instant, he had already fainted. Swoosh! An incomparably sharp sword chi cut through the cracks in the armor that scattered in all directions, and directly approached the southern gate of the necklace. This time, Xiang Nan's explosion of strength had not yet completely ended. He did not dodge or dodge, and casually grabbed a piece of flying armor and placed it horizontally in front of him. Without Wang Jinghai's blessing, the armor was cut in half by Mo Chi's sword chi, but the sword chi was also cancelled out. Xiang Nan grabbed the armor plate with his left hand and placed it with his legs. He quickly rotated half a circle and threw the armor plate out with a buzzing sound, just about to hit Mo Chi's chest. At this moment, Li Lingfeng suddenly attacked. He rushed out of the arena with a heavy saber in his hand, but he came too quickly to release his saber chi. He could only use his long saber to protect Mo Chi's chest. Mo Chi also drew out the scarlet fire sword. At the same time, he was struck by the armor fragment that contained 6,000 jin of attack power. Clang! A deafening collision sounded. Mo Chi and Li Lingfeng were smashed to the point that they vomited blood. With their combined strength, they were knocked back more than 10 steps and both retreated to the edge of the arena. Xiang Nan took advantage of the victory to chase after them and rushed towards the two of them with a slippery step. At this moment, a sound of air breaking suddenly sounded from outside the arena. A small object suddenly shot towards the arena. The target was Xiang Nan. Xiang Nan was caught off guard and hurriedly turned around, sweeping the bare barrel of the gun in the direction of the concealed weapon. The thing that flew over made Xiang Nan feel extremely threatening. It was with this spear that he exploded to the limit, pushing his strength to the peak of 6,300 jin. The barrel of the spear suddenly collided with that thing, and it actually shattered the spear barrel into pieces on the ground. As for Xiang Nan, because he was bombarded by a huge force, he quickly retreated. The blood in his body surged, and he almost spat out a mouthful of sweet blood. Fortunately, he suppressed it in time. Who ambushed me? How shameless! Xiang Nan cursed angrily. He had already seen clearly that the thing that flew over was actually just a grain of peanut. Moreover, that peanut was definitely not accompanied by the weather first, but by a genuine yuan qi. Only experts at the origin realm above the Xiantian realm could release their yuan qi. Seeing the opportunity, Mo Qi and Li Lingfeng immediately counterattacked Xiang Nan without hesitation. Xiang Nan's palm landed on the side of Mo Qi's sword, sending the scarlet flame sword flying. Then, he punched Mo Qi's chest. Outside the arena, another peanut had actually flown over. The accuracy of this peanut was astonishingly high. In the next instant, it would hit Xiang Nan's fist. If it hit, then the power of the peanut would definitely cripple Xiang Nan's right hand. In a hurry, Xiang Nan immediately removed the power from his fist and took 3 steps back, only to be kicked in the stomach by Mo Qi. Li Lingfeng, who was rushing over from the side, was about to hit Xiang Nan's back with the long saber in his hand. Xiang Nan quickly poured the weather into his feet. With an almost impossible posture, his entire body leaned against the ground and slid out, avoiding Li Lingfeng's heavy saber. After settling down, Xiang Nan coldly turned around and saw a man dressed in white standing in the direction of the Wang clan. The man was in his early 20s, and his cultivation level was around the 5th level of the origin return realm. At this moment, the man was holding an empty peanut shell in his hand. He looked at Xiang Nan with a smile that was not a smile, and there was a grain of peanut between his right fingers. Good opportunity. Mo Qi and Li Lingfeng got a chance to catch their breath and wrapped around Xiang Nan from both sides. Xiang Nan glared angrily at the handsome man in the direction of the Wang clan. The man raised his fingers with peanuts between them, which meant that if you dared to move, I would jump out. Stop! At this moment, City Lord Hongzhen stepped forward and shouted, "Who is so bold to disturb the town selection?" However, now that the City Lord had just appeared, it was too late. The battles on the arena were changing in the blink of an eye. Mo Qi and Li Lingfeng had already arrived, using their best abilities. The scarlet flame sword in Mo Qi's hand instantly slashed out 3 times. 3 sharp sword qi shot towards Xiang Nan at the same time like a trident. These 3 swords were hacked out almost at the same time, which showed how shocking Mo Qi's technique was. Li Lingfeng chopped down the heavy saber in his hand. The heavy saber was like a huge mountain, and it pressed down with a magnificent momentum. The man in the direction of the Wang clan was still smiling faintly, his eyes closely following Xiang Nan's every move. Xiang Nan was furious. He glanced at the Wang clan man provocatively, as if he was saying, "You want to help them? Alright, today, I will personally defeat Mo Qi and the others under your disturbance." At this moment, Xiang Nan moved. At this moment, time seemed to have stopped. Mo Qi's sword, Li Lingfeng's saber, and the peanuts in the hands of the Wang family man were all aimed at Xiang Nan. Xiang Nan's upper body suddenly bent backwards like a bow. At the same time, the last peanut in the Wang clan man's hand pierced through the sky with a whoosh and shot in the direction of Xiang Nan. This peanut was incredibly fast after adding a small amount of yuan qi. It instantly cut through a long distance, and almost in the next moment, it was already close to sticking to Xiang Nan's back. At this moment, the lightning veins in Xiang Nan's body once again exploded to its limit. The direction the peanuts flew in was predictable. As long as Xiang Nan's upper body bounced back, he would definitely be hit. Chapter 12: A Shocking Sound. However, Xiang Nan relied on his shocking explosive power to turn his upper body back into a backward somersault. He soared into the air, and peanuts brushed past his back. He forcefully pierced through the back of his long shirt, but failed to hit Xiang Nan's fleshly body. This time, Xiang Nan's back somersault focused all of his strength on his feet. Not only did he dodge the peanuts, he dodged Mo Chi's trident sword Chi, and dodged Li Lingfeng's heavy saber descending from the sky. He even used his feet to kick Mo Chi and Li Lingfeng's chests. Mo Chi and Li Lingfeng were kicked to the point their chests caved in. They didn't even have time to react. At the same time, they coughed out a large mouthful of blood and fainted before they were sent flying out of the arena. Swoosh! Xiang Nan successfully landed on the ground and stood upright on the arena. The entire arena was completely silent. Bang! 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 1. The audience was dumbfounded. He actually won. Xiang Nan won the battle with 1 versus 3. Especially since he was alone, he had defeated 39 young masters without rest. This was an unprecedented victory in the Bluestone Town election. He won so beautifully, so shockingly. I declare. When the referee came on stage, he grabbed Xiang Nan's right hand and raised it high up, shouting loudly, "Bluestone City, Bluestone Town's regional town election is over. First place, from Bluestone Town, Xiang Clan, Xiang Nan." Boom! The scene exploded, and countless spectators cheered loudly. This way of winning overturned everyone's perceptions and even made them forget that they had lost the bet. If it weren't for the fence blocking the edge of the spectators' seats, there would probably have been spectators rushing down by now. The referee raised Xiang Nan's hand high up, announcing Xiang Nan's glorious victory. This was the most unbelievable victory in the history of the town election. At this moment, countless people cheered for Xiang Nan. There was only one protagonist in the entire town selection, and that was Xiang Nan. Since the Xiang clan has this child, it seems that they are going to rise again. City Lord Hongjin nodded in relief. He seemed to have seen the future of the Xiang clan. The referee said to Xiang Nan, "According to the previous agreement, you won all the money in the gambling house. Someone will personally deliver it to the Xiang family later." Xiang Nan nodded slightly. He took a deep breath. He was in a good mood. It seemed like his lightning meridian talent was really strong. However, the young man from the Wang clan. He turned around and looked at the Wang clan. The mysterious young man had already disappeared. Only the Wang Changhe clan's clan master roared angrily, "Bring those useless trash home for me." Very quickly, the Wang clan, Mo clan, Li clan, and the 3 great clans carried away the defeated juniors of their clans. This time, Wang Changhe had painstakingly tried to kill Xiang Nan, but in the end, he had become the biggest loser. It became the joke of the entire Bluestone City. Everyone in Bluestone City knew about the life and death contract that Wang Changhe had made with Xiang Nan. In the end, not only did Xiang Nan not die, he also won. Not only did he win, he even won so fiercely. This slap was enough to make the Wang clan unable to lift their heads in the next few years. However, one thing made Xiang Nan feel very strange. The young man from the Wang clan had clearly ambushed him and the city lord had clearly seen him. However, City Lord Hong Zhen did not say anything and let the young man leave. Thinking of this, Xiang Nan secretly thought that the young man's background was definitely not simple. Xiang Nan. The city lord personally came down to congratulate Xiang Nan and said, "Come to the celebration banquet tonight." At that time, all the winners of the town selection in Blue Stone City will come. "Alright, thank you Uncle Hong for your hospitality." Xiang Nan smiled and nodded. He did not have the arrogance he had after winning. Seeing this, Hong Zhen praised Xiang Nan. "Xiang Zhanxiong has a grandson like you. It's worth it." In a noisy atmosphere, Xiang Nan left the arena and returned to Bluestone Town. But behind him, there was a tide of people. As they followed Xiang Nan, they rushed to inform everyone about what had happened in the Bluestone Town election. It was as if the winner was not Xiang Nan, but the spectators who were fortunate enough to see Xiang Nan's spectacular game. At this moment, no one dared to shout at Xiang Nan anymore. Even a fool knew that Xiang Nan was a youth with boundless prospects. Who would dare to offend him in the slightest? This was especially true for Xiang Nan, who was definitely a celebrity beside City Lord Hong Zhen. Xiang Nan was unable to withstand the disturbance and directly used force to speed up his return to Blue Stone Town like a gust of wind. When he got home, he couldn't wait to tell his parents the good news. Xiang Zhanxiong even made an exception and left the cultivation room. The entire family was filled with joy. Before Xiang Nan could chat with his family, he heard someone shouting loudly from outside the mansion. "Bluestone City, the Huang clan is here to pay their respects." "Oh, Huang clan." Xiang Zhanxiong and Xiang Xiaohua were both stunned, but they saw a large group of people rushing in from the gate outside the mansion. The Huang clan was one of the clans in Bluestone City, but it did not belong to the martial arts clan. The leader was the Huang clan's clan head, Huang Dengtian. Behind him were dozens of servants and many servants carrying 2 large boxes. Huang Dengtian cupped his fists and smiled, "Brother Zhanxiong, I heard that your mansion's Xiang Nan has won a great victory. I am here to congratulate you." Ha ha ha. Xiang Zhanxiong was very pleased with himself, so he was naturally in a good mood. "Brother Huang, you're too polite," he replied. "Black Rock Town, the Lu clan is here to congratulate you." Outside the door, another shout sounded, and a large group of people surrounded them as they walked in. "Oh! Patriarch Lu Wanxiong." Xiang Zhanxiong had just received Huang Dengtian and quickly went to greet the Lu clan. "I didn't expect that even the people from Blackstone Town would come." Xiang Xiaohua smiled incomparably happily. "Greenwood Town, Lu clan, Zhang clan, and Kai clan, come and congratulate us." Xiang Zhanxiong was overwhelmed and hurriedly called for Xiang Xiaohua and his wife, along with a few servants, to greet the guests. However, the Xiang clan had been in a terrible state of despair in recent years. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been in such a hurry. The news of Xiang Nan's victory spread across the entire Blue Stone City like wings. There was an endless stream of people coming to congratulate him. There were wealthy families, commercial clans, and many martial arts clans also came to congratulate him. It had been many years since the Xiang clan had become as lively as it was today. Some people even knew about the Xiang clan's recent situation. They even brought red lanterns and hanging colors, causing the Xiang clan to decorate their lanterns and gongs and drums. Those who came to congratulate him all rushed over to chat with Xiang Nan, hoping to get to know a young hero like Xiang Nan. But before they could get close to Xiang Nan, the outside of the Xiang Manor became lively again. 200 city guards personally rushed to the Xiang clan, and the one leading them was the referee who presided over the selection of Bluestone Town. The guests who came to congratulate him naturally moved aside tactfully. The referee smiled heartily and handed a wooden tray over to Xiang Nan. He kindly said, "Little Nan, open it and take a look." Chapter 13 Celebration Banquet. Xiang Zhanxiong stroked his beard and nodded with a smile. The more he looked at his grandson, the happier he felt, as if he had eaten honey. Xiang Nan opened the red cloth covering the tray and saw two things lying inside. One was a red invitation card, and the other was a shiny golden card. The referee said, "This invitation is from the city lord who invited Xiang Nan to participate in the town election celebration banquet tonight. And this storage card contains more than 3 million gold coins. It is the winning bet you won today. I personally delivered it to you according to the agreement." 3 million. The onlookers immediately cried out in alarm. Even Xiang Zhanxiong and Xiang Xiaohua were shocked. They hadn't heard that Xiang Nan had won the bet. Because the news of Xiang Nan's victory in the battle was too shocking, so much so that everyone rushed to tell each other how powerful Xiang Nan was and how outstanding he was. However, they did not publicize that Xiang Nan had won the bet. It was probably because those spectators felt embarrassed that they deliberately avoided this matter. Xiang Zhanxiong laughed until now, his face stiffened, but he still felt pleasantly surprised one after another. Previously, Xiang Nan had sent back 5 million gold coins and a large amount of herbs, but now he had won another 3 million gold coins. This time, the Xiang clan's turnover was certain. As for the guests, they all looked at Xiang Nan with envy. They all envied Xiang Zhanxiong for having such a good grandson. Look at him. The city lord's mansion personally sent 200 city guards to send invitations. What kind of identity was this? Xiang Nan smiled as he accepted the invitation and handed the storage card to his grandfather, Xiang Zhanxiong. Then, he cupped his fists and cupped his hands to the guests, saying, "Thank you, uncles and uncles, for coming to congratulate me. However, please make amends. I have to hurry back to Bluestone City to attend the City Lord's celebration banquet." Everyone hurriedly cupped their fists and cupped their hands, expressing their understanding. Naturally, little Nan doesn't need to be so polite. That's right. The City Lord personally invited him. That's a matter of great importance. Of course, it's the most important. The referee smiled and said to Xiang Zhanxiong, "Brother Zhanxiong, let's go to the City Lord's mansion together. It's been a long time since you and our City Lord have gathered." These words made Xiang Zhanxiong feel incomparably comfortable. He only felt that he had lost face for many years, and today, he had recovered all of them. However, Xiang Zhanxiong still clasped his fists and apologized, saying, "Son Xiaonan, will go alone. Someone Xiang's avatar is useless, so he has to stay behind to entertain the guests." Understandable. The referee nodded reasonably, "Then please find time to meet with the City Lord another day. Our City Lord misses you very much." "Alright, Xiaonan, let's go. Grandfather, father, mother, little Nan has gone." Xiang Nan waved goodbye to his family and went to Bluestone City with the city guards. By the time they arrived at the City Lord's mansion, the carriages and horses had already gathered outside the City Lord's mansion. The town selection wasn't just Bluestone Town, there were also 6 other towns, big and small. In each town's town selection, the top 40 winners were invited. The other clans were thriving. Naturally, the elders brought their juniors to the celebration banquet. Only Xiang Nan came alone from the Xiang clan. He looked a little lonely. At the entrance of the city lord's mansion, the people of the various towns and clans were greeting each other and humbly giving way to each other. They were all squeezed at the entrance. Xiang Nan felt strange in his heart. Why didn't those people enter the manor? Why were they all squeezed here? It was only when they got closer that they realized that City Lord Hongzhen was actually standing at the door. Naturally, the people from all the clans didn't dare to cross Hongzhen and lead them into the manor. "Little Nan, you're here." Inside the crowd, City Lord Hongzhen laughed loudly. Xiang Nan was stunned and asked in surprise, "City Lord, are you welcoming me?" "Naturally, I will welcome you." Hongzhen laughed and pushed the crowd away, heading straight for Xiang Nan. Everyone didn't dare to enter the manor without permission. Instead, they stayed at the entrance and waited for the city lord to enter the manor. Yet, the city lord's actions were only to welcome a Xiang Nan. This treatment is a little too bad. The young disciples of the victorious clans had originally thought that it was a good thing to be able to attend the celebration banquet. However, when compared to Xiang Nan, they felt both envious and jealous. Especially the Wang clan, Li clan, and Mo clan of Bluestone Town. They were secretly staring at Xiang Nan, who had received special treatment, with ugly expressions on their faces. This Xiang Nan sensed everyone's gazes and said humbly, "Thank you for your invitation, City Lord." Xiang Nan has felt honored to be prepared. How dare you trouble City Lord to personally go out to welcome him? The City Lord patted Xiang Nan on the shoulder and said, "You came to the City Lord's mansion personally before the town election to try to get a spot in the competition. How courageous! In order to participate in the town election, you did not hesitate to sign a life and death contract. What courage! In the town election, you fought alone against all the heroes and won the first place. What a hero!" The city lord seemed to intentionally say these words to others, and his voice was raised several times. He grabbed Xiang Nan's right hand and said, "Such a courageous young hero deserves to be welcomed by me, Hongzhen. Come, Xiang Nan, come with Uncle Hong. Our celebration banquet officially begins." Under everyone's gazes, Hongzhen actually pulled Xiang Nan into the manor together. Everyone knew what was going on when they saw this scene. If they couldn't even tell what the city lord meant, then they would really be an idiot. Xiang Nan had truly become the #1 celebrity that City Lord Hongzhen had taken a fancy to. Within the City Lord's mansion, 6 towns, each with 40 winners, a total of 240 people. Amongst them, only the top 5 experts of each town, a total of 30 people, and their family elders, could sit in the living room of the City Lord's mansion. The other winners and their families sat down in the main courtyard outside the living room to participate in the celebration banquet. Because the Bluestone Town's town selection competition was Xiang Nan's victory from the first to the last, he was unable to rank 2345. Therefore, Xiang Nan, Wang Jinghai, Li Lingfeng, and Mo Qi entered the living room. There were many seats in the living room, but they were also filled with people from various clans. The main seat was naturally the seat of City Lord Hongzhen, and there were 6 seats beside him. The champions of the 6 towns were seated on each side of City Lord Hongzhen. After Xiang Nan sat down, he immediately discovered the members of the Wang clan, the Li clan, and the Mo clan. It was worth noting to Xiang Nan that the young man from the Wang clan who had used peanuts to ambush him in the last round of the town election was actually one of the Wang clan's disciples. While Xiang Nan was looking at the man was also looking at Xiang Nan. The gazes of the two of them met in the air, but the young man's eyes carried a very interesting expression. This kind of gaze made Xiang Nan feel a little strange. Normally speaking, the Wang clan had lost so much face now, so they should try to stay as far away from him as possible. However, the young man from the Wang clan seemed to have a confident look on his face. Chapter 14 Wang Xiaoyun. Come, come. At this moment, the city lord interrupted Xiang Nan's thoughts. Hong Zhen raised his glass and said, "Let's congratulate the young geniuses of our Blue Stone City together. Because of their existence, our Blue Stone City can grow stronger and stronger." Everyone raised their glasses and congratulated in unison. After 3 rounds of drinks, the atmosphere was lively, and the topic of discussion was naturally around martial arts and the wonderful performances of the 6 township selection areas. Following that, the city lord announced on the spot that he wanted to introduce a very important guest to everyone. The important guest he invited over was the mysterious young man from the Wang clan. Upon seeing this person, Xiang Nan paid extra attention. Seeing how respectful city lord Hong Zhen was towards that mysterious youth, he knew that that person's identity was extraordinary. "Let me introduce you." City lord Hong Zhen pointed at the man from the Wang clan and said, "This person is Wang Xiaoyun, the eldest son of Wang Changhe, the current head of the Wang clan. At the same time, Wang Xiaoyun is also a core disciple of our Blue Tide Continent's second-rate sect, Qihua sect." Once these words were spoken, there was an uproar. Second-rate sects. That was an existence second only to the 8 great sects. To a person in a small place like Blue Stone City, a second-rate sect like Qihua sect was definitely an existence above the clouds. A junior from the Wang clan actually entered the Qihua sect. Moreover, he had become a core disciple of the Qihua sect. Congratulations! I knew the Wang clan would definitely be extraordinary. That's right, Xiaoyun, this child has been talented since he was young. I've already seen it. Patriarch Long River, the nobility has produced such a talented person. This is truly the glory of our Bluestone City. Everyone's attitudes towards the Wang clan instantly changed. Even the large clans in the other towns looked at the Wang clan differently. So that's the case, Xiang Nan nodded to himself. No wonder Wang Xiaoyun ambushed him on the day of the election, but the city lord didn't blame him. So he didn't dare to offend Qihua sect. Immediately after, the city lord threw out another bomb. Wang Xiaoyun was actually the sect representative representing the Qihua sect. In other words, Wang Xiaoyun's words could determine who would be able to enter the Qihua sect in the future. This news instantly praised the Wang clan to the heavens. His status had even surpassed that of the city lord in this sensitive period. Everyone from the Wang clan stood up one after another and went to establish a relationship with the Wang clan. At this time, the Wang clan sneered in Xiang Nan's direction. The situation was obvious. Most of the sects that had come to select outstanding talents were third-rate sects or even fourth-rate sects. At this moment, the involvement of a second-rate sect would definitely make the other sects very fearful. It could be said that the representatives of the other sects would follow Wang Xiaoyun's lead. Now that everyone looked at Wang Xiaoyun again, they were already quite respectful. This kind of respect came from fear and admiration. Xiang Nan frowned. He knew that his path of retreat was getting narrower and narrower. He and the Wang clan were enemies, but the Wang clan had obtained the absolute right to speak in the selection of Martial City. He was afraid that his future path would become even more difficult. Thus, the focus of the celebration banquet shifted from the 6 champions to Wang Xiaoyun alone. Xiang Nan also sensed that everyone's attitudes towards him had also quickly turned indifferent, as if everyone had deliberately kept a distance from him. Wang Xiaoyun gave Xiang Nan a meaningful look and cleared his throat. Everyone knew that Wang Xiaoyun was going to speak, and the scene fell into absolute silence. Wang Xiaoyun smiled and said, "If it weren't for my strong recommendation, how could we, Qihua sect, have fallen for such a remote corner of Green Cloud City? And this time, Qihua sect only gave me 5 spots, so I hope that the young geniuses of each clan can work hard." Everyone nodded respectfully. Young Master Wang is right. We will do our best to live up to the expectations of the Qihua sect. Yes, we will not let you down. On behalf of Bluestone City, I would like to thank you for your kindness. As the representative of the Qihua sect, Wang Xiaoyun had become a local emperor. At this moment, City Lord Hongzhen looked at Xiang Nan indifferently with a look of sympathy and helplessness in his eyes. "Young Master Wang, I heard that Qihua sect status is extraordinary. He is only inferior to the power of the 8 great sections." "That's right, young Master Wang. To be able to enter the Qihua sect is truly the glory of our entire Bluestone City. Can you talk about the situation of the Qihua sect so that we can broaden our horizons?" Everyone asked, but the question they were asking was clearly to curry favor with Wang Xiaoyun. As for the young people who were preparing to participate in the selection of Martial City, they treated Wang Xiaoyun as if they were worshipping an idol. "Haha." Wang Xiaoyun smiled and said, "The reason I was able to enter the Qihua sect is partly because of my outstanding martial arts talent, and partly because I cultivated hard. I always remember one thing, that is, you can't be too ostentatious. You have to learn to be humble." When the women heard Wang Xiaoyun's words, their eyes flickered with bright little stars. They admired Wang Xiaoyun very much. Wang Xiaoyun's words were obviously a side attack on Xiang Nan, mocking him for being arrogant and domineering in the selection of Martial Town. "Xiang Nan, you are one of the most outstanding young men in our Bluestone Town. Do you think what I said makes sense?" Wang Xiaoyun suddenly asked Xiang Nan. This question exceeded everyone's expectations. No one expected Wang Xiaoyun to directly point the spear at Xiang Nan at the celebration banquet. Everyone's gaze shifted to Xiang Nan. In the entire celebration banquet, everyone was standing and listening to Wang Xiaoyun's speech, but Xiang Nan was the only one sitting in his seat. Xiang Nan's actions caused everyone to frown, believing that Xiang Nan was too arrogant. Xiang Nan's voice was loud and clear as he said, "Our Xiang clan was too low-key and couldn't bear to suppress our rival clans. That's why they ended up in such a miserable situation." Everyone's expressions changed when they heard this. They all thought that Xiang Nan would lower his head to Wang Xiaoyun. At the very least, he should be more polite, right? Who knew that not only did Xiang Nan not bow his head, he was actually fighting with Wang Xiaoyun. These words had already made Wang Xiaoyun's expression unsightly. Then, Xiang Nan smiled and said, "Also, keeping a low profile and being humble. That's the behavior of the weak. Sometimes, it's not our choice to keep a high profile, but because our opponent is too incompetent." Oh. Wang Xiaoyun's face was gloomy as he slowly played with the finger ring in his hand and said, "You're too arrogant to say that. You think you're the most outstanding person. Even so, do you dare to compete with other geniuses on the spot?" Haha. Xiang Nan smiled faintly and said, "Your Wang clan really doesn't forget to suppress our Xiang clan at all times. Do you want me to make a fool of myself in public? However, that's good. I've fulfilled your wish. If you have any ability, just take it out." "Right, right, right." The city lord hurriedly came out to make things right, saying, "Since you want to compete, then naturally you will have to compete in martial comprehension. I have collected some very good cultivation techniques over the years. How about letting the outstanding geniuses on the scene learn them on the spot? Chapter 15 Autumn Leaf Slash. The city lord was afraid that Wang Xiaoyun would attack Xiang Nan in public, so he came up with this idea. This made everyone overjoyed. The city lord's own cultivation technique was actually going to be taken out for others to learn. Every single one of those precious cultivation techniques was priceless. We can't use it here. Let's go to the main courtyard. The city lord immediately ordered people to retrieve their cultivation methods and invited everyone to go to the open space. After hearing this news, all the families in the main courtyard were overjoyed. Even young people who knew that their talent was inferior to others would squeeze their heads open to participate in this competition. Even if I lose, what's the harm? After all, he had seen the cultivation technique. Remember, he would quickly write it down when he returned home. Soon, the main courtyard was emptied of a large area, and on a table at the scene, 3 cultivation techniques were placed by the city lord. Looking at the 3 cultivation technique manuals, everyone present was restless. They rubbed their fists and were eager to try. Some even took a few large mouthfuls of tea. No matter what, they had to memorize as many cultivation technique manuals as possible. The city lord stood behind the table and said, "These 3 cultivation techniques are not a very high grade. The first one is a low-grade spirit stage, the second one is a mid-grade spirit stage, and the third one is a high-grade spirit stage." Hearing this, everyone's blood immediately boiled. Heavens, all of them are spiritual cultivation techniques. At this moment, the city lord took out a stick of incense and said, "Let's set a time limit of 1 stick of incense. Even if the person who learns a cultivation technique within the time limit wins, he can participate in the second round of the competition, learn the second cultivation technique, and so on. In that case, all the geniuses and youths who won the town election should come and participate." Everyone cheered happily. Spiritual grade cultivation techniques were extremely rare. A clan like the Wang clan, the Li clan, and the Mo clan probably only had 3 books and 5 books. If they memorized these 3 books today, it would be a great harvest. Looks like the city lord has really invested a lot of money. Unexpectedly, Xiang Nan suddenly spoke. He looked at Wang Xiaoyun and said, "It's just that it's too boring to compete with the winner of the town election. Brother Xiaoyun, since you want to make things difficult for me, why don't you join us?" Xiang Nan. The city lord's expression changed slightly as he whispered, "You're crazy. Wang Xiaoyun is a core disciple of Qihua sect. Do you need me to remind you of his comprehension?" Xiang Nan only smiled and didn't say anything, but Wang Xiaoyun laughed and stared at Xiang Nan. "Are you sure? Do you really want to humiliate yourself?" Xiang Nan smiled and said, "Then let's invite Brother Xiaoyun to humiliate me. How about it?" "All right." Wang Xiaoyun raised his robe and walked to the center of the arena. "Today, I will meet you, you ignorant brat." The city lord loved and hated Xiang Nan. He loved Xiang Nan for his courage and hated him for the same reason. Immediately, the city lord let the 240 winners of the town selection, together with Wang Xiaoyun himself, enter the reception hall. The rest of the idle people stayed in the courtyard. The city lord held the first cultivation technique in his hand. 241 people formed a circle. The city lord personally read out the incantation of this cultivation technique. Everyone immediately comprehended it after listening to it. Hearing the incantation chanted by the city lord, 200 of the 240 people revealed expressions of embarrassment. Xiang Nan listened to the cultivation method and laughed in his heart. This cultivation method was quite strange. It was very different from ordinary cultivation methods, so it was naturally extremely difficult for ordinary people to learn it. However, he was knowledgeable. To him, this cultivation technique sounded like a child's play. On the other hand, Wang Xiaoyun had a calm expression. After all, he had seen a high-level cultivation technique in Qihua sect, so he had some ability. After the city lord finished reading the cultivation technique, he said, "This cultivation technique is called the Blue Cloud Sword. If you want to learn it to great success, it will take at least 1 to 3 years. My request is very simple. You only need to learn within 1 incense stick to reach a small success. Even if you follow suit, you only need to not lose the essence of the Blue Cloud Sword to pass the test. Alright, everyone, let's go out." Arriving at the courtyard, the city lord held a long sword in his hand and said, "I will use the 3 moves of the Blue Cloud Sword on the spot for everyone to judge." As he spoke, the city lord pointed at a tree in the courtyard and said, "The first stance of the Blue Cloud Sword, Autumn Leaf Slash. If you want to do a drill, you must stand within my limits." The city lord drew a straight line on the ground, and then threw a fallen leaf into the sky. The straight line was exactly 10 meters away from the fallen leaf. Immediately after, the yuan qi of the sword in his hand condensed and slashed out. The yuan qi condensed into a sword light and sliced open the fallen leaves with a whoosh. Everyone was filled with envy. That was the sword light. Only those who were activated by yuan qi could be called sword radiance, while those who were activated by the first weather could only be called sword qi. After the fallen leaves fell to the ground, the pupils of everyone who knew something about martial arts contracted. The fallen leaf was actually sliced in half by a single sword strike. Not only was the place where it was broken very smoothly, it was almost incomplete. One had to know that sword qi or sword light could be easily hacked out, but when the sword qi and sword light hit a fallen leaf, basically all of the leaves would be destroyed. However, the fallen leaves were neatly divided into 2 halves. This required that the sword qi and sword light must be refined. Be careful. It's the same as hacking a leaf with an axe. The leaf must have been smashed. Only by cutting a leaf with a steel needle can the leaf be preserved so intact. Seeing this, everyone clapped their hands and applauded, while the youths participating in the competition all had bitter expressions on their faces. Let's begin. After the city lord finished his drill, he lit a stick of incense. Many youths were each assigned a sword, so they began to practice on the spot with all sorts of hands and feet. Only 2 people did not hold a sword, one was Xiang Nan, the other was Wang Xiaoyun. Xiang Nan had gone through the autumn leaf slash's incantation once in his mind, and he already knew what to do. This move was to highly condense the primordial weather or yuan qi, compress the strike surface of the sword qi and sword light to the narrowest, and strive to obtain the sharpest cutting effect. Sword. It's just a carrier. The true essence lies in the way yuan qi circulates. Xiang Nan sat down cross-legged, and the xiantian in his body moved according to the unique way the autumn leaf slash operated. Wang Xiaoyun stood on the same spot and used a finger to draw, as if he was groping for something. The parents of those clans were all sweating for their clan's younger generation. After an incense stick, the city lord asked all the participants to practice the autumn leaf slash on the spot. The expressions of the youths were awkward. It was obvious that they had not learned it, so they could only brave it. A youth walked forward and stood in a straight line. He held a sword in his hand and condensed the weather into a sword. Then, he slashed out with his sword. However, the fallen leaves thrown out of the sky by the city lord did not follow a fixed trajectory. The youth's sword chi actually failed to hit the fallen leaves. Failed. The city lord shook his head. He didn't even touch the leaves and was eliminated. The next youth was even more exaggerated. His sword chi was actually more than 10 feet away from the fallen leaves. Failed. The city lord shook his head. Afterwards, of the 241 people, 210 were actually cleaved. The spectators were all confused. If one were to say that their clan's juniors were considered outstanding, how could they not even be able to cut the leaves? Autumn leaf slash is still too difficult for you. You have to do your best to compress the width of your sword chi. This will make it difficult for your sword chi to remain stable, sighed the city lord. Chapter 16 Measure for Measure. But you don't have to blame yourselves. It's already pretty good that you can do this. Most people can't even cut a straight line. Only then did everyone understand that it was not that the accuracy of those youths was too bad, but that this sword chi was too difficult to control. In the end, the top 30 geniuses and youths began to practice. Wang Jinghai was the first to perform, and his performance caused a lot of cheers. This was because Wang Jinghai was the first person to be able to hit a fallen leaf with his sword chi. Unfortunately, the sword chi was not refined enough, and the entire leaf was destroyed. The second Li Lingfeng was about the same as Wang Jinghai. The sword chi also hit the fallen leaf, but it didn't cut down the leaf at all. Instead, it pushed the leaf away. Mo Chi's performance was the best. He had originally used his sword. This sword hit the leaf, but the sword energy was not enough to condense it. He directly cut the leaf in half. The city lord immediately took the leaf to take a look. However, he saw that the leaf was indeed cut open, and it was also cut from the center. Unfortunately, the entire leaf had lost about 90% of its surface area. Very good. The city lord nodded. It's good to be able to leave some fragments of the leaves behind. When the Mo family heard this, they were extremely proud. As for the others, most of them were similar to Wang Jinghai and Li Lingfeng. They could touch the leaves, but they were unable to cut them apart. They either blasted the leaves away or sent the light leaves flying. Of the 6 champion youths, 5 had done almost the same thing as Mo Chi, and could already be ranked in the top 6. In the end, only Xiang Nan and Wang Xiaoyun were left. Everyone's gazes were focused on the 2 of them. The 2 of them were the protagonists who provoked this dispute. Are you coming or am I coming? Xiang Nan smiled faintly without the slightest bit of pressure. Wang Xiaoyun also maintained his demeanor and said, since I provoked the competition, I will give you more time to slowly study. I will first, then you. After saying that, Wang Xiaoyun straightened his body. He held a sword in his hand and his waist was straight. Just this hand stance was very handsome and beautiful, and it inevitably caused the female guests to scream. Xiang Nan, watch carefully. Let's see what a genius's perception is. Wang Xiaoyun circulated his yuan qi and poured it into the longsword, causing the entire longsword to immediately flash with a faint light. Immediately after, the city lord threw out the fallen leaves, and Wang Xiaoyun slashed out with his sword. Its yuan qi condensed into light, and the sword light gathered without dissipating. When it hacked out, it was a meter long, but when it hit the fallen leaves, it was actually a meter long. It could almost be said that there was not a single bit of dissipation. One had to know that the sword chi that the teenagers had chopped out earlier was already showing signs of dispersing halfway through the journey. Swoosh! The leaves split in half. Everyone watched nervously as the city lord recalled the fallen leaves. The city lord lowered his head and looked at the fallen leaves in his palm. He couldn't help but nod in admiration and then showed the leaves to everyone. Everyone cried out in alarm when they saw the leaves. The fallen leaf was split vertically from the middle, and it was accurate. And the loss of fallen leaves was only 40%. All right. The Wang Chanha clan's clan master applauded on the spot. To be able to achieve such a degree within a stick of incense is truly worthy of being the #1 genius of our Wang clan. The city lord also nodded, thinking back to the first time I cultivated autumn leaf slash. I didn't reach this level. Wang Xiaoyun, a genius. It's your turn. Wang Xiaoyun casually carried his sword behind him and made a please gesture to Xiang Nan. The city lord looked at Xiang Nan worriedly and tossed the fallen leaves out. And Xiang Nan, swinging his hand, was a sword. Quick. Too fast. It was so fast that the audience didn't even have time to exclaim and question. At the very least, Wang Xiaoyun did a hand stance and aimed at the fallen leaves. However, Xiang Nan immediately drew his sword the moment the city lord threw out the leaves. This sword strike seemed to be extremely casual, as if it had been practiced thousands of times. The sword chi sliced through the sky, and the fallen leaves were divided into two halves, slowly drifting away. When the city lord saw this, his expression immediately changed drastically. He quickly retrieved the fallen leaves and held them in his palm to watch. This gaze was actually dripping with cold sweat. When he showed the leaves to everyone, none of them could speak. The fallen leaves that Xiang Nan cleaved were exactly the same as Wang Xiaoyun's. He only caused the fallen leaves to lose 30% of their value. However, this was based on 3 prerequisites. Only after careful consideration did he know the path. First, Wang Xiaoyun was 6 or 7 years older than Xiang Nan, and he was also an expert at the origin realm. He spent much more time cultivating martial arts than Xiang Nan. Second, Xiang Nan drew his sword even faster. It could be said that he didn't even make any preparations and directly attacked, but Wang Xiaoyun did. Third, Yuan Qi itself was more condensed than before. The first weather was very easy to dissipate. A streak of sword qi was usually the most complete within 5 to 6 meters, and it was also the most powerful. But beyond this distance, it would easily collapse, and even change its shape. However, Yuan Qi was not. In the hands of powerful experts, Yuan Qi could be hacked out by hundreds of feet, or even thousands of feet, or even tens of thousands of feet. Of course, this depended on the strength of the cultivation technique. A powerful cultivation technique could better condense Yuan Qi before the weather, allowing it to gather and not disperse. However, Wang Xiaoyun and Xiang Nan used the same cultivation method. As for Wang Xiaoyun, he used Yuan Qi that was naturally stronger than the previous weather. Judge. Even though the city lord did not announce who was stronger, Wang Xiaoyun's expression was extremely hard to see. How could it be? How could this be? How could that kid surnamed Xiang do this? The city lord interrupted everyone's whispers and said, "Second stance, autumn leaf scroll." After saying that, the city lord tossed out a fallen leaf. Following that, the tiger beneath his feet blew with the wind, and his entire body took light steps to reach the bottom of the fallen leaf. Then, the sword in his hand continuously slashed towards the sky. Streaks of sword light crisscrossed each other, but they never touched the fallen leaves. They only used the air currents brought along by the sword light to prevent the fallen leaves from falling, rising, deviating, or leaving. It was as if the leaf had been frozen in mid-air, and it didn't move at all. Seeing this scene, the spectators on the scene were all excited, and they clapped their hands and applauded vigorously. One incense stick. The city lord put away the fallen leaves for everyone to see. The leaves were intact, and he said, after an incense stick, "Please invite the 30 youths who won the first round to come and practice." Those 30 people were all using autumn leaf slash, and those who touched the fallen leaves could be considered to have passed the test. Everyone immediately started practicing again, but this time, they were clearly even more anxious. After bringing along an incense stick, the 30 most outstanding youths began to practice. The first teenager sliced the leaf aside and turned it into powder with a single sword strike. The second youth was even more exaggerated. With a single strike, the strong wind brought by the sword chi blew away the leaf without a trace. The rest of them also practiced one after another. They followed the example of the city lord and chopped out strands of sword chi, intending to counteract each other with the strong winds brought about by the sword chi, producing the result that the fallen leaves would always soar into the sky. Unfortunately, the difficulty of this autumn leaf scroll far exceeded that of autumn leaf slash. After an entire round, all of them failed. Not even Machi could do it. In the end, only Xiang Nan and Wang Xiaoyun remained. Chapter 17. Be relentless. Who will come first this time? Xiang Nan hugged his shoulders and looked at Wang Xiaoyun confidently. Wang Xiaoyun gritted his teeth and walked to the center of the arena with a livid expression. After the city lord abandoned the fallen leaves, he took a quick step forward. He saw the sword in his hand continuously hacking out, streaks of sword light crisscrossing and swishing towards the sky. As for that leaf, it was constantly leaping up and down in the wind driven by the sword light, clashing with each other and swaying unsteadily. This was already extremely rare. Everyone was intoxicated as they watched it. Waves after waves of cheers rang out. In the end, Wang Xiaoyun let the fallen leaf stay in mid-air for nearly 10 breaths before landing on the ground due to a mistake. A single breath of this world represented the time an ordinary person took to breathe in and out. It was about 4 seconds, and 10 breaths was 40 seconds, almost a minute. It's your turn. Wang Xiaoyun wiped the sweat from his nervousness. His face was full of confidence. He believed that this time, Xiang Nan could not surpass him no matter what. Xiang Nan smiled and walked into the open space. Then, the city lord tossed the fallen leaves away. Immediately afterwards, Xiang Nan actually had a sword in his hand, his left hand behind his back, and he casually slashed out with a sword. Sword chi soared into the sky, blowing the falling leaves in the sky, followed by the second, third, fourth, and fifth swords. Sword after sword, sword after sword. The strands of sword chi were neat and even, like the perfect lines written on rice paper with ink brush against a ruler. He seemed to act casually, but in reality, the sword chi was extremely accurate, no more, no less. Each sword chi had the same strength, the same speed, and the same degree of condensation. The leaf seemed to have stopped moving in the sky. It didn't move, nor did it tremble. The scene fell into a deathly silence once again. If it was said that the city lord of the first round was still able to take care of Wang Xiaoyun's face, he didn't give Xiang Nan and Wang Xiaoyun the upper hand. In this second round, anyone with eyes could see who was the strongest genius. Wang Xiaoyun's face was filled with frustration. His face was completely red from being suppressed. He had never thought that he would want to make things difficult for Xiang Nan, but in the end, he was fiercely beaten in the face by Xiang Nan. This doesn't count. At this moment, Wang Xiaoyun no longer cared about his dignity. He angrily said, "The cultivation methods I cultivate are all biased towards the berserk type. This blue cloud sword technique clearly doesn't conform to my martial arts characteristics. That's why Xiang Nan took advantage of me. As soon as these words were spoken, the city lord frowned slightly. He thought to himself that this Wang Xiaoyun looked elegant and graceful, but he was actually such a petty person. If he lost, he would lose, but he refused to admit it. "All right then." The city lord nodded. "Since only the two of you have won this round, then the third round will begin." In the third round, the city lord practiced the blue cloud sword. The name of this move was exactly the same as the cultivation technique. It could be seen that it was the most difficult and powerful move. The city lord tossed out the fallen leaves, and he was in a straight line, 10 meters away from the fallen leaves. However, he used sword beams to swiftly hack at the fallen leaves. The fallen leaf swayed back and forth in the collision of the sword light, jumping up and down, finally landing on the ground, and was retracted by the city lord. What was frightening was that when he showed it to everyone, everyone's faces had already turned pale from fear. The fallen leaf was not chopped into pieces, but on the surface of the leaf was a neat word, sword. Even Xiang Nan couldn't help but applaud this scene. It seemed that city lord Hongjun really had some skills. Seeing this, Wang Xiaoyun's face had already turned very pale. Obviously, he felt extremely exhausted. After an incense stick, Xiang Nan and Wang Xiaoyun were going to compete in the last round of the blue cloud sword. The other contestants could only watch from afar, but the way they looked at Xiang Nan was very different. It could be said that there was a kind of fear in their eyes, as if they were looking at a monster. He didn't know how terrifying the difference in talent between him and Xiang Nan was. "I'll go first." Wang Xiaoyun took a deep breath and was ready. Wang Changhe's expression was very nervous. He knew that Wang Xiaoyun definitely wouldn't be able to do it well, but he expected that Xiang Nan would definitely be worse. "Begin." The city lord tossed the fallen leaves away. Wang Xiaoyun took a deep breath and immediately slashed out with the sword in his hand. Sword beams shot out randomly, causing the fallen leaves to churn up and down. However, it was clear that the leaves were in a terrible state. After the leaves landed on the ground, the city lord took them back and showed them to everyone. The leaf had already been hacked into a sorry state. 50% of its surface had been lost. On the remaining leaf surface, one could only see a paradoxical word, sword, crooked and crooked. Moreover, this sword only had the upper half, and the lower half had disappeared along with Yezi. Wang Xiaoyun gritted his teeth and looked at Xiang Nan fiercely. He thought to himself that if I could do this, you definitely wouldn't be able to do it. Everyone's gaze shifted to Xiang Nan once again. "Little Nan, you're ready." The city lord threw out a new leaf. Xiang Nan still had a smile on his face. He had his left hand behind his back, and there was a sword in his hand aimed at the fallen leaves in the sky. It was directly the 9 swords. Quick! His speed was frighteningly fast. He didn't chop one sword chi after another, but used his fastest speed to chop out 9 sword chi at once. The 9 strands of sword chi struck the leaves one after another. Each strand of sword chi did not cut the leaves apart, leaving only traces of the sword chi's edge. The drill ended in an instant. Beautiful. The city lord no longer cared about his identity and shouted on the spot. After retrieving the fallen leaves, the expression on his face was incomparably wonderful, and he then showed the leaves to everyone. Sword. On the fallen leaf, the word sword was incomparably clear and true. Moreover, this sword character actually contained the charm of the sword, the smell of the sword, and the spirit of the sword. If the word right of the city lord was just a word. In that case, the sword character Xiang Nan wrote really carried a bit of the sharpness of the sword. It had a charm. The city lord held the fallen leaves and was speechless for a long time. Xiang Nan's sword characters weren't as neat as his own, but they had a taste that he couldn't even write. This kind of character could not be written unless he had been immersed in the path of the sword Tao for dozens of years. However, this kind of character was written by a 16-year-old youth. It was simply unimaginable. Everyone present had big mouths and almost forgot to breathe in shock. Wang Xiaoyun. Xiang Nan turned around and retracted his sword. He stood there in a beautiful retracted position. He pointed at Wang Xiaoyun and said, "What else do you have to say?" Wang Xiaoyun's entire face was red and purple and blue, and he wished he could find a crack in the ground. In his entire life, he had never encountered such a huge defeat in martial arts, especially when he was defeated by a 16-year-old youth at the first level of the Xiantian realm. This sense of defeat made Wang Xiaoyun unwilling to accept it, and he was absolutely unwilling to accept it. That's right. After a long time, the city lord let out a long sigh and said, "Both of you did well. Actually, I think." "No." Wang Xiaoyun roared. He was so angry that his long hair fell down like a madman. "Xiaoyun." The city lord frowned. Wang Xiaoyun said angrily, "What kind of comprehension consideration is this? This examination is simply a person's ingenuity. What does it have to do with comprehension?" Chapter 18 Lightning Meridian Talent. I admit that the little brat surnamed Xiang is smarter than me. So what? Smart? A woman needs to be smart. This is martial arts, not sewing. Wang Xiaoyun had completely lost his demeanor, causing everyone to be stunned. Then what do you think we should do? The city lord frowned. He originally wanted to give Wang Xiaoyun a step down, but Wang Xiaoyun didn't appreciate it. Xiang Nan looked at Wang Xiaoyun with a faint smile. He saw that this brat had lost his dignity and identity. He saw that he was written as a rogue in the hearts of everyone. Wang Xiaoyun said angrily, "To compete with comprehension, it is naturally to compete with comprehension ability. Then we need to find an unfathomable cultivation technique, and everyone will compete with comprehension ability. No one else can do it. Only I can do it. This is called a high level of comprehension. Only I can succeed." These words were uttered by Wang Xiaoyun and sounded extremely ear-piercing. Obviously, Wang Xiaoyun had been spoiled by his family since he was young. He could only accept that everyone praised him alone and would never allow anyone to steal his limelight. This kind of behavior was clearly a child who fought for the favor of his parents. How could he be an adult? All right. The city lord was already in a bad mood. He nodded and said, "What do you mean? There's no need to compare the next two cultivation techniques." "No need." Wang Xiaoyun waved his hand and said, "Find a high difficulty technique. It would be best if you, the city lord, didn't learn it." The city lord took a deep breath and endured Wang Xiaoyun's arrogant words. He nodded and said, "Coincidentally, I have one here." With that, the city lord flew into the air and returned in less than a cup of tea. He already had a damaged book in his hand. The book looked tattered, without even a cover, as if it had existed for many years. The city lord said, "This technique was obtained by chance when I was young. Because it is incomplete and has never been practiced, the grade of the technique cannot be determined. In my opinion, this should be a fire attribute cultivation technique, but strangely, its cultivation technique is very awkward. No matter what, it can't be cultivated." Awkward? Xiang Nan frowned. He noticed that the city lord's words weren't difficult, complicated, but awkward. Since you want this kind of cultivation technique, then you and Xiang Nan should come and comprehend it together. The city lord directly invited Xiang Nan and Wang Xiaoyun into the reception hall, and then only taught them the cultivation technique and chant. Xiang Nan's brows furrowed deeper and deeper as he listened to the mantra. On the other hand, Wang Xiaoyun was at a loss when he heard this. This cultivation technique is very strange. As far as the existing part is concerned, the entire technique revolves around fire attributes. However, the awkward part was that if he cultivated according to the incantation, he would not be able to condense Xiantian into fire energy and Yuan Qi into Yuan Qi flames. It was as if an outsider had randomly created it. However, he carefully tasted it, and it seemed that there was some kind of essence hidden within it. Xiang Nan secretly mobilized the weather and used the cultivation technique to describe it, but he tried 3 times and failed to condense his fire energy. Strange, Xiang Nan thought to himself, there is such a peculiar cultivation method in the world. Every time before the fire qi is successfully condensed, the weather will suddenly dissipate. This technique doesn't seem to want people to condense fire energy, but its description seems to want people to condense fire energy. Isn't this inconsistent? Could it be, that's right? That's right. Xiang Nan was shocked and broke out in cold sweat. He thought to himself, damn it, this is not a fire attribute cultivation technique. This is a lightning attribute cultivation technique. After thinking through this section, Xiang Nan thought about it again. Every time he thought deeply, he was very surprised. This was a fire lightning cultivation technique. It surged like fire, and it was as fierce and domineering as thunder. Ray was too tyrannical. Moreover, it was too condensed, just like a bolt of lightning falling from the sky. Therefore, lightning-attributed cultivation methods were mostly difficult to form damage ranges. Even if they could be formed, they would still spread out into a huge power grid. The consumption of Yuan Qi was unimaginable. However, this book forcefully turned the power of thunder into fire. It exploded like a flame, forming a large-scale destructive move, but its consumption was far less than that of lightning. He really had no place to find after stepping through the iron shoes, so it didn't take much effort to obtain them. The lightning attribute cultivation technique that he had been thinking of day and night had actually been obtained because of Wang Xiaoyun's troubles. However, the power of this technique was too shocking. Xiang Nan decided to only do a drill and not display the power of this remnant technique in public. Later, the city lord invited the 2 of them back to the courtyard and said, I used 23 years, but I was unable to cultivate this technique. Therefore, I will give you more time today. 3 incense sticks. Furthermore, I don't want you to really be able to cultivate it. You only need 3 incense sticks before you can tell me the truth. Hearing this, Xiang Nan smiled. He knew that he would win. Wang Xiaoyun couldn't possibly succeed. This was because one had to possess the lightning meridian talent to learn this damaged book. Even Wang Xiaoyun could not think of the mysteries of this damaged book. Afterwards, the 3 incense sticks began to count. Xiang Nan sat down cross-legged and quietly cultivated. The 3 incense sticks quickly passed, and the moment everyone was looking forward to finally arrived. The city lord clapped his hands, signaling that the time was up. According to the introduction of the incantation in this damaged book, an incomplete incantation can be practiced into a move. If I can successfully cultivate this move, I should be able to activate a fire ring. Unfortunately, I have not succeeded before. Then, I would like to invite the 2 of you to talk about it now. What exactly did you see in this cultivation technique? Xiang Nan smiled at Wang Xiaoyun and said, do you want to go first or should I go first? However, Wang Xiaoyun sneered, since I used to be the one to go first, then I'll go first this time." As he spoke, he looked at the city lord and said, "Lord City Lord, it's a bit too simple to tell the secrets of this cultivation technique. I can practice it on the spot." "What?" The city lord and Xiang Nan were stunned. The city lord was shocked. "You actually learned it?" "Naturally." Wang Xiaoyun was filled with high spirits. Everyone present was also shocked. With such a powerful martial artist like the city lord, Wang Xiaoyun had only used 3 incense sticks to master a cultivation technique that he had not been able to learn for 23 years. And he could even practice on the spot. Xiang Nan also found it inconceivable. He couldn't figure out why Wang Xiaoyun could learn it. Could it be Wang Xiaoyun also had the talent for lightning veins? "Hurry up." The city lord hurriedly brought over a table and said, "Please Xiaoyun drill. It's right here on the table." The Wang clan was so happy, especially Wang Changhe, who could be considered arrogant. Although his eldest son had lost to Xiang Nan in the front, so what? In Wang Xiaoyun's words, the thing before him was simply nonsense. As long as Xiaoyun could comprehend this cultivation technique, he would see what face Xiang Nan had. Under everyone's gaze, Wang Xiaoyun regained his calm and collected appearance. He tied up his long hair and enjoyed the admiration of everyone. Afterwards, he walked to the table and pressed his palm against the table, keeping a small distance between his palm and the table. Immediately after, he closed his eyes and secretly mobilized his yuan qi. After about 3 breaths of time, Wang Xiaoyun shouted in a low voice, but a ring of fire suddenly appeared in his palm. Chapter 19: A Shameless Person. Everyone present was shocked. The core disciples of the second-rate sects were indeed extraordinary. Wang Xiaoyun really succeeded. On the other hand, a suspicious expression appeared on the city lord's face. Xiang Nan, on the other hand, immediately laughed. "How is it?" Wang Xiaoyun wiped away his cold sweat. He raised his hands high and shouted, "Who exactly is the #1 genius of Bluestone City?" Everyone sighed in admiration as they clapped their hands and applauded. However, the city lord still had a suspicious expression. He seemed to feel that something wasn't right, and it couldn't be said that something wasn't right. He had flipped through this cultivation technique by himself. Although he hadn't succeeded in cultivating it, he still knew more or less about it. If this damaged book was successfully cultivated, would it really be like this? Something's wrong, isn't it? Can't you figure it out? Xiang Nan stood on the city lord's body and said, "You can't figure out what's wrong, can you?" The city lord nodded in confusion. "Xiaoyun is indeed talented, but the effect is different from what you expected, right?" Xiang Nan laughed out loud. "Do you know what's wrong?" The city lord shook his head, and the spectators beside him were surprised to hear Xiang Nan's words. Xiang Nan laughed loudly, because Wang Xiaoyun did not succeed at all. "He is cheating." "What are you talking about?" The city lord was shocked. Xiang Nan nodded and said, "Wang Xiaoyun only used a fire attribute cultivation method to deceive everyone. Perhaps he used Qihua sect's own cultivation method. Perhaps the effect of that cultivation method is somewhat similar to that described in this damaged book." So that's the case. The city lord woke up from a dream and patted his forehead. "No wonder I always felt that something was wrong." Wang Xiaoyun's face immediately turned red and he angrily said, "Xiang Nan, what nonsense are you talking about? What evidence do you have that I cheated? I'm using the technique from the damaged book. Since you've lost, you have to admit it. Stop spouting nonsense here. Do you think this will prove that you're stronger than me? It's so funny. Xiang Nan walked to a table with a faint smile and said, "You want evidence? Open your eyes and see clearly. This is evidence." With that, Xiang Nan's right hand pressed down on the table, and a crackling sound came from the center of his palm. Immediately after, a very strange ring of fire instantly spread out. The ring of fire was actually crystal blue. It was precisely the fire energy condensed from the previous weather, but its color was too strange. What was even stranger was that the table wasn't burnt to ashes by the ring of fire, but instantly shattered the entire table. It was as if a 5-horse corpse had been torn apart, and the table was directly blown apart, causing it to shoot everywhere. The power of the explosion was not due to the high temperature of the flames, but to the lethality of the explosion. The guests at the scene couldn't help but applaud. This was due to admiration from the bottom of their hearts, so much so that they temporarily forgot about their own positions. If he forgot to do so, would he offend the Wang clan and Wang Xiaoyun? Tonight, Xiang Nan's skill was shocking. The talent he displayed was truly amazing. Wang Xiaoyun, what else do you have to say? Xiang Nan looked at Wang Xiaoyun indifferently. This time, the scene immediately quieted down. Everyone knew that Wang Xiaoyun had lost. Moreover, his loss was too embarrassing. He had such a high status. He actually chose to cheat in order to win against a youth 5 or 6 years younger than him. It was a disgrace. It was just that no one dared to make a ruckus on the spot. Everyone quietly looked at Wang Xiaoyun and waited for his reaction. Wang Xiaoyun stood on the empty ground. His face was first pale, then it slowly turned into an iron-green color. Finally, it turned red, and even his eyes turned red. This expression clearly meant that Wang Xiaoyun was already furious. "All right!" Wang Xiaoyun shouted. His right hand grabbed back and unsheathed his sword. He angrily said to Xiang Nan, "How dare you humiliate my Qihua sect disciple in front of everyone? How dare you? My Qihua sect has never suffered a loss. Not good." When City Lord Hongzhen heard this, his heart was filled with anxiety. Hongzhen had seen too much of Wang Xiaoyun's expression and behavior. Sure enough, before Wang Xiaoyun could finish his sentence, he unexpectedly stabbed at Xiang Nan with his sword in hand. He wanted to kill Xiang Nan on the spot. The long sword sliced through the sky, bringing with it a sharp and domineering sword light. It was incomparably dazzling under the night sky. Wang Xiaoyun was an expert at the 5th level of origin return. Even if Xiang Nan used all of his strength, he would not be able to withstand his sword strike. Everyone present was shocked. No one expected that Wang Xiaoyun would start a massacre after losing the competition. At this critical moment, another thick and fierce Yuan Qi suddenly pierced through from the other side. The 2 strands of Yuan Qi collided violently in the air, causing a deafening explosion. Wang Xiaoyun's sword light was inclined towards the Yuan Qi, causing it to be blasted into specks of light all over the sky. The Yuan Qi that saved Xiang Nan was clearly many times stronger. After shattering Wang Xiaoyun's sword light, it still flew into the distance until it disappeared into the night sky. Hongzhen. Wang Xiaoyun was furious and turned to look at Hongzhen. Sure enough, City Lord Hongzhen was maintaining his punch, and his fist was shining with primordial energy. Wang Xiaoyun pointed at Hongzhen's nose and said, "Even you, the little Bluestone City Lord, dare to stop me. Aren't you afraid of offending me, Qihua sect?" Hongzhen's expression was also very ugly, but he was speechless. Indeed, with his status, the Qihua sect could annihilate him with just a flick of his finger. At this moment, a sudden applause rang out from the clinker. Everyone looked at the source of the applause in unison, only to see that Xiang Nan was smiling and applauding. There was not even a trace of panic on his face, as if the person who had almost been killed earlier was not him. Little bastard! Wang Xiaoyun glared at Xiang Nan angrily. Xiang Nan said neither humbly nor arrogantly, "What a good core disciple of the Qihua sect. How magnanimous! But don't forget your identity. What are you doing in Bluestone City?" Wang Xiaoyun was shocked and immediately fell silent. Yes, he, Wang Xiaoyun, represents the Qihua sect to select outstanding disciples. If he killed Xiang Nan, then the Qihua sect would not have to mix with him anymore. What, your Qihua sect's disciple representative killed someone because the candidate's talent was too strong? Then who would dare to enter the Qihua sect in the future? Xiang Nan's words pierced into Wang Xiaoyun's heart like steel needles. Especially when Xiang Nan opened his arms and said to Wang Xiaoyun, "Come, if you are not afraid that your sect will punish you, then come kill me." Wang Xiaoyun hesitated for a long time and could only stomp his feet angrily. He pointed at Xiang Nan's nose and said, "Good boy, there's yours. Wait for me." After saying that, Wang Xiaoyun stomped his right foot on the ground. After a violent burst of yuan qi, his entire body rushed into the night sky with a whoosh and disappeared. The moment Wang Xiaoyun left, the Wang clan didn't have the face to stay here. They wanted to kill Xiang Nan 3 times and 4 times, but they were slapped fiercely by Xiang Nan 3 times and 4 times. First, Wang Jinghai and the others were overthrown by Xiang Nan, then the Wang clan moved out of Wang Xiaoyun, but they were still defeated by Xiang Nan. After the Wang clan left, the other clans came forward and cupped their fists towards Xiang Nan, saying some respectful and kind words. Chapter 20. Share a cup of soup. No one was blind. Everyone knew that Xiang Nan would definitely make a big splash in the future. Taking advantage of Xiang Nan's young age, it was important to get on well with him. All right. City Lord Hongzhen clapped his hands and said, "Since that's the case, the celebration banquet has come to an end. Everyone, let's disperse. Xiang Nan, it's been a long time since I talked to your grandfather. Let's go. Today, I'll go back with you to catch up with Xiang Zhanxiong and drink wine." Hearing this, everyone was moved. Hongzhen's words were too profound. He was obviously not going to see Xiang Zhanxiong, but was afraid that the Wang clan would kill Xiang Nan halfway and wanted to personally escort Xiang Nan home. Xiang Nan was also very touched. He whispered to Hongzhen, "There is no need for the city lord to do this. If you do this, you will be at odds with Wang Xiaoyun openly. You are afraid of offending Qihua sect." Hongzhen laughed heartily 3 times and said heroically, "I, Hongzhen, have been a smooth person for half my life. I was ignited by your hot blood tonight, so what if I accompany you to fight?" Xiang Nan nodded solemnly and said, "Xiang Nan will not forget the kindness of the city lord." Hongzhen grabbed Xiang Nan's hand and shouted, "Someone, accompany me to the Xiang clan in Bluestone Town." The night was getting darker and darker, but the little Bluestone Town was still brightly lit. It was all because many clans had gone to visit the Xiang clan tonight and had not been willing to leave. They were just waiting for Xiang Nan to come back and talk to Xiang Nan. Xiang Nan and City Lord Hongzhen easily arrived outside the Xiang Manor under the protection of the 200 city guards. The city lord smiled when he saw the large number of carriages at the entrance of the Xiang Manor. It seems that the Xiang Manor is very lively today. Little Nan, you can go in first. I'll wait for you to have a cup of tea before entering. Xiang Nan looked at the city lord and was grateful. He cupped his fists at Hongzhen and strode into the house. Hong Zhen was very meticulous. He knew that Xiang Nan was the main character tonight. If he and Xiang Nan entered the house together, he would steal Xiang Nan's limelight. At this moment it was a crucial period for the Xiang clan, so Hong Zhen took the initiative to give a cup of tea to Xiang Nan. Xiang Nan had just entered the courtyard when he saw that the courtyard was full of shadows and guests were everywhere to congratulate him. However, the atmosphere seemed to be a little strange at this moment. Ah, Xiang Nan is back. When the surrounding crowd saw Xiang Nan, they all smiled and greeted him. Xiang Nan nodded to the crowd one by one. From the path everyone had opened, he saw hundreds of strangers in the middle, confronting his grandfather. When Xiang Nan saw this, memories immediately surged out of his mind. These hundreds of people who had suddenly appeared were actually the Xiang clan's fleeing clansmen. Huh? Why are they back? Xiang Nan frowned and continued forward. Huh, this must be little Nan. I haven't seen him in years. He really looks like an adult. Among the hundreds of newly returning clansmen, 3 old men stopped Xiang Nan's footsteps. Xiang Nan frowned. These 3 people he knew were his own uncle, his 3rd uncle, and his 4th uncle. Xiang Zhanxiong had a total of 4 brothers. Among them, the eldest brother, the 3rd elder, and the 4th elder were the 3 great elders of the Xiang clan, while Xiang Zhanxiong was the 2nd elder and inherited the position of Xiang clan's clan master. However, when Xiang Nan saw the expressions of the 3 elders and his grandfather Xiang Zhanxiong's ugly face, he realized that things weren't that simple. Looking at his cousins that he hadn't seen for a long time, all of them had arrogant expressions on their faces. As for his parents, he was unable to find them all of a sudden. After searching carefully, he discovered that they had actually been pushed to the periphery by the crowd. This scene caused Xiang Nan's eyes to narrow. Boss, 3rd brother, 4th brother. Xiang Zhanxiong took a deep breath and his face sank like a waterway. Could it be that what you said just now is true? That's right. Naturally, it's serious. The great elder stepped forward and said with a smile that was not a smile, we are also members of the Xiang clan. It is only natural for us to take back half of the Xiang clan's property. That's right. A young man stood beside the great elder and helped. This person was the great elder's grandson, Xiang Zhonghua. Xiang Zhonghua said to Xiang Zhanxiong, old grandpa, in the past, you controlled half of the Xiang clan's property, while my grandfather, 3rd father, and 4th father held the other half together. Now that we've returned to the Xiang clan, it's still the same as before, and it's still the same now. Hearing these people's words, Xiang Nan almost burst into laughter. With these people, they came back to split the money. Seeing that the Xiang clan was about to rise again, they ran back to get a piece of the pie. Previously, the Xiang clan was destitute. Later, Xiang Nan brought back 5 to 6 million gold coins. After winning the bet, he brought back another 3 million gold coins. In addition, there were countless guests giving gifts today. That was a huge fortune. This group of people had previously abandoned the Xiang clan and escaped, but now they wanted to come back and split the money. The abacus was a little too good. Xiang Zhanxiong was furious. He angrily said, the reason our Xiang clan was able to come back from the dead was because of little Nan's efforts to turn the tide. If it weren't for his brilliance in the town elections, how could our Xiang clan have the current status? You people are really shameless. 3rd elder chuckled and said, we naturally know that it was little Nan's contribution, so we won't compete with little Nan for anything. He can continue to be the future successor of the Xiang clan's patriarch. That's right. Third elder's grandson said, "We brothers have given up the position of successor to little Nan. We just want our own share of the property back." Xiang Zhanxiong was left speechless by everyone's words. As a matter of fact, everyone was a member of the Xiang clan, and they all had close relatives. Their request made it impossible for Xiang Zhanxiong to refuse. Fourth elder added another fire and said, "Why, second brother, aren't you planning on letting us return to the Xiang clan? You want to dominate the Xiang clan? Grandfather, look what you said." A graceful girl covered her mouth and chuckled, "Second grandpa is the most reasonable. How could he do such a thing? Otherwise, how would he face the ancestors?" At this moment, Xiang Nan suddenly laughed. Everyone was arguing fiercely when Xiang Nan's laughter sounded a little abrupt. Everyone looked at Xiang Nan with strange expressions. As for the guests who came to congratulate him, they were secretly observing. They wanted to take this opportunity to see if this young man, Xiang Nan, would panic when dealing with such a scene. If Xiang Nan's performance was good enough, then it meant that everyone had come to deliver the congratulatory gift today. It was the right gift. If Xiang Nan was captured by the returning tribesmen, it meant that Xiang Nan was not a big shot. "Little brother Nan, do you have something to say?" Grand Elder's eldest grandson, Xiang Zhonghua, asked with a smile. Xiang Nan did not answer directly. Instead, he smiled as he walked towards the crowd and pulled his parents over. "Father, mother, you guys stand here." Xiang Nan placed his parents beside Xiang Zhanxiong and said, "This is the position of your two elders. No one else can snatch it away." Good. Everyone secretly raised their thumbs. The first step was to straighten out his parents' positions. This was done beautifully. Novel Empire. Immortal God of Battle.